pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the regular agenda. Is there any additions, corrections?
I was just wondering, Mayor, if we might want to move item number 5 into number 4 slot, since the public meeting is starting at 6 p.m. Just a thought.
Is that okay? Sounds okay. It sounds okay to me. Any other additions, corrections to the agenda as presented? Otherwise, I would take a motion with that amendment, move those two items around.
So moved.
Is there a second? There's a motion by Bruce, seconded by Sean to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Rick made the motion, seconded by Sean. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now, we're gonna go to the public hearing. County Road State Aid Highway 15 / Columbus Avenue North Improvement 2022 CIP project. So, who's gonna be presenting? Mr. Cavett? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, and the public. We are here for the public hearing for the 2022 Street and Utility Improvement Project, also referred to as County State Aid Highway 15 or Columbus Avenue. There is an agenda in the back and a sign-up sheet if you are here for the street public hearing. We'd appreciate you signing in, just so we know who's here. On the agenda too, I did leave my contact information as well as Public Works Director Matt Rinda's contact information, as will be the main contacts for this project. So why are we here tonight? This is, again, the public hearing on the improvement. This is to give the public an opportunity to voice your opinion regarding the project to the City Council and the ability to ask some questions. I will have a presentation here. And I'll go through the presentation relatively quickly, open it up to the council for questions, and then the mayor will turn it over to the public after the council's gone through their questions. Before I get started, can I see by a show of hands who is here part of the Street and Utility Improvement Project? It's okay if you are. You can raise your hand. Okay, because there is another public hearing for the Truth and Taxation later on. So, okay, well. Again, why are we here? Again, like I said, so give the public, those affected by the project, opportunity to voice opinion, but also because this is part of the public improvement process. It's called Minnesota Statutes 429 is what we refer to. And basically, it's what I mentioned is it's the most effective financing tool for municipalities to finance and fund local improvements. Basically, it's what, when we get into projects and there's the ability to assess the benefit to the benefit of the project to the benefiting properties, that all falls under Minnesota Statutes 429. So this is part of a required process that we go through for public improvement projects. The project location is Columbus Avenue from Main Street on the south end, where we left off with the Main Street roundabout project. And it extends up to, all the way up to 12th Street. But there's a little difference in what will happen in those two areas. From Main Street up to 4th Street, so up to about where the cemetery is, this stretch is slated for a full, complete reconstruction. And that means everything. All the surface street, sidewalks, all the utilities underneath, sewer, water, storm sewer, will all be totally reconstructed. From 4th Street up to 12th Street, up by the high school. This is only proposed at what we call a pavement replacement project, or also referred to as a full depth reclamation, where basically the pavement is ground up, pulverized, the excess is removed, and the pavement is replaced. There will be very little utility work, the exception will be some catch basin repairs and things like that. So it'll be relatively quick and relatively minor work from 4th all the way up to 12th. There won't be any work happening at the two roundabouts that were built at 7th Street and at 12th Street. We'll be matching into those locations. Kind of just skipping over or just mentioning this here briefly. Again, the full reconstruction section involves complete reconstruction of the whole road bed, placing geotextile fabric, sand, gravel aggregate base, and 2 new layers of blacktop, new curb and gutter, drainage, drain tile, sidewalk where appropriate or being replaced. So again, a full reconstruction, which you've seen on other projects in the area. The proposed improvement on what we call the reclamation or pavement replacement project is similar. If anybody noticed what was happening on County Road Old County Road 37 or 7th Street back in 2019, where again the road will be pulverized, the excess materials removed, and then the road's repaved on top of it. Relatively not very disruptive. So, cost of the project. As part of the project, or part of this process, we had to prepare what we call a feasibility study. It's a study that outlines the scope of work, the estimated cost, and the proposed financing for this project. So the project's been estimated at a total of $2.4 million. Kind of broke down here by street improvements, $1.5 million, 62% of the project. Stormwater improvements, $246,000 or 10% of the project. Water system improvements, about $391,000 or 16%. Sanitary sewer improvements, $185,000 or 8%. Street lighting, which will be by a separate, be installed by New Prague Utilities, but again, part of the project cost, about $33,000 or 1%. And then budgeted seal coating and striping after in the latter years here. So 1 year or 2 years out, it's about $63,000 or 3%. So again, to come up with that $2.4 million. So how do we fund local improvements like this? Projects like this are funded through what I said, general levy, which is the citywide property taxes, fees from the sewer utility fund, the water utility fund, the stormwater utility fund, assessments to benefiting properties, outside funding. Sometimes we have that and sometimes we don't. In this case, we do. We have some outside funding by the county to contribute their share of the project. Or, as I note here, some fair and reasonable balance of all of the above. So the funding, as it's laid out in the feasibility study, shows sewer utility fund about $125,000 or 5%. Water utility fund about $330,000 or 12%. Stormwater utility $123,000 or about 5%. Assessments $789,127 or 33%. And Scott County about $1.1 million or 45% of the project. Again, to come up with that $2.431 million. Talk a little bit, this is not the assessment hearing. The assessment hearing is something that will take place in the fall, but we do want to share with folks. We did this at the same information we provided at the neighborhood meeting. Assessment methodology, the city's assessment policy is basically set up so it's consistent, uniform, and fair and equitable treatment, project to project, neighborhood to neighborhood. All single-family residential properties are treated the same, as everyone is part of a street system. And I'll get into a little details what I mean by this. Residential assessments are by a unit basis. Basically, one lot, one house is one unit. We don't worry about front footage, size of lots, if it's a little big or a little small, unless it could be subdivided. That is the basis of the assessments. It's the base rate, residential unit property. Separate rates are developed for multifamily, institutional, commercial, and industrial properties. And I'll get into that again on a little diagram I've got. Also, the assessments are based on a fixed rate. It's a rate such that every project, year to year, neighborhood to neighborhood, if for the same type of improvement that's done, the assessment rate is the same. The exception might be a slight inflationary increase project to project, but basically that way everybody pays the same. Any fluctuation in construction costs are borne by the city. So again, that way the rate is known before the project takes place. We have a rate that's recommended in the feasibility study, and very likely, most likely, these will be the rates that or less that'll, at the time we get to the assessment hearing. Again, I mentioned, so again, any fluctuation in project costs are borne by the city as a whole and not by the individual on the assessments. So this is the diagram that I was referring to when I talk about unit basis. So if you picture this as a street improvement, and that these are individual single-family lots, it's one unit, one unit, one unit. If it's a property that's on a corner and only one side is being done, which in this case, on this project, since it's only Columbus Avenue, any properties on the corner are assessed a half a unit under this project, and will be assessed a half a unit under a future project, or they were assessed under a past project a half a unit. That's how the assessment policy works. For the larger properties, multifamily, commercial, institutional, industrial, they're based on an equivalent number of single-family lots. So in this case, this would be 3 lots, because basically, the way it's determined is the number of units is approximately 75 feet, which is kind of the standard for a minimal residential property. So we looked in larger parcels, the non-single family, divide by 75, calculate how many units they'd be, and that's how it's applied to the project. The other thing worth noting is non-residential, non-single-family residential properties are assessed at a slightly higher factor of 30% higher. Their rate is. These are the assessment rates that are presented in the feasibility study, and I asterisked all the water services and sanitary sewer service rates, that these will be reviewed after the bids. I kind of believe that the rate will actually come down slightly. These are the rates that were on the Main Street project, and because the Main Street project was a much more complex and more difficult project, I think we saw slightly higher rates on the service assessments. So for most of the single-family homes, the service lateral, so all the mains, the water mains in the road will be replaced. The sanitary sewer main in the road will be replaced, and again, in the full reconstruction area from Main Street up to 4th Street. When the mains are replaced, the service laterals out to the properties have to be replaced as well. It's a must. So these are the amounts that are proposed to be assessed. For the 1-inch water service, $33,240 was what we estimated. This is basically the assessment rate from Main Street, and it factored in an inflationary rate for 1 year. The sanitary sewer service assessments, $2,340 per service. Again, I kind of feel these numbers may come down when we look at the project after it's bid. As for the street assessments, the pavement replacement or reclamation section, these are the rates that are proposed. These are based on past rates. These are not proposed to change when we get to the assessment hearing. These are what we're recommending in the report, and we'll be recommending with the assessment hearing in the fall. $4,970 per unit for single-family parcels, or $6,465 per unit for all other parcel type of properties. That's the institutional, commercial, industrial, and multifamily properties. The full reconstruction section from Main Street up to 4th Street, $9,190 per unit, again for single-family residential, or $11,945 per unit for all others. Again, these are the same rates that we're seeing on past projects, factored in by a COLA or inflationary factor to come up with a rate for this project. Again, the assessment, there'll be a lot more information on assessments in the fall, but this is basically how the process works. There'll be a notification will be set sent out in the fall of 2022. That'll be probably in September. Proposed assessment hearing would also be in the fall, probably in October. The way the assessments work is they're payable interest-free within 30 days after adoption of the assessment roll. That basically brings it up to November. Any unpaid assessments, a person does not required to make payment within 30 days, but so if any payments are not paid in the first 30 days, they're levied to the county, to Scott County, and payable with the property taxes over a 15-year period, with the first payment due in 2023. There are options for deferred assessments on homesteaded properties. Again, that information will come out with information in the fall, but basically it provides ability for deferment for senior citizens, people that are disabled and retired by virtue of disability, some other factors. And I always like to point out that a deferment does not mean the assessment payment goes away. It just means it's deferred to make payment, and the interest still accrues. Usually it's for somebody that's in their home and eventually is going to sell and move out. Again, more information will be provided under the assessment hearing in the fall. Here's the proposed schedule as outlined in the report. We're here tonight on December 6th for the public hearing. Presumably the council will order the improvement, as we call it, and we will begin preparing final plans, specifications, construction documents to prepare to advertise for bids. We'll be bringing it back to the city council on February 22nd. Advertise for bids in March. We're looking at holding a neighborhood meeting, an open house in the spring, likely in March. Give residents an opportunity to take again a look at what's proposed on their street, et cetera. We will be meeting with some of the major property owners again, the school district, the hospital, and the church. Opening bids in March 25th is what's proposed, and then be bringing it back to city council on April 4th for award. Basically going into pre-construction and construction during, construction is proposed to take place basically between that Memorial Day to Labor Day timeframe, basically when school is out, since we have a church, school, et cetera, in that area. Again, assessment hearing in October, and assessments levied to the county in November 2022. And with that, that's all I have. Questions for the city council, and then at that point, later you can defer it to the public. So,
Does the council have any questions?
Just a couple of quick ones, Chris. This information's consistent with the feasibility report. Nothing's changed with
that is correct. It's consistent with the feasibility study and consistent with the neighborhood meeting. The only thing that's changed since the neighborhood meeting is the dollar amounts were tweaked a little bit from that meeting till we got to the report, but it's what's in the report.
And you mentioned the assessment rate will be adjusted after a bid, but homeowners or property owners really will not know what that change reflected until the assessment hearing.
Yeah, unless we do like we did with Main Street. We did once we got the bids in, we analyzed the service assessments. And at that point, we did publish that information to give people a heads up. That's certainly an opportunity thing that we can do. We don't have a lot of properties on this project. We have like about 33 individual property owners.
So how would we publish that when you say that?
Well, we would just send out notice
okay.
to the official property owner. Is what
That's
I'm
something
thinking
I would
we
like.
would do.
I think that would be a good idea because
Like I said, I most likely I would imagine those service assessments will actually come down, is what I would expect, or certainly not be any higher. Again, I know we are seeing some inflation in construction, so maybe I'm speaking a little advanced.
Let's be hopeful.
Yeah. But street assessments, if we're consistent with how we've been project to project, year to year, those would stay as they are presented.
I like your presentation. It's nice and short. Is this something we could keep on our webpage then for future reference? Or?
Absolutely. Well, and the feasibility study is also posted on the city's website as
So
well.
people could look at this later if they choose.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Any other questions? Okay. Does anybody want to address the council? If they do, we just need you to approach, give your name, address, and state your question or concern. And you have 5 minutes to speak if you wish to do so. So does anybody want to come up to the podium and address the council? And if you think of a question afterwards, don't be afraid to contact the engineers. You know, it's not just like it has to be tonight, and then the question, if it gets answered or doesn't, it'll still depend, and it'll still be credited, so. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And now we have to decide the resolution ordering the improvement. Does anybody want to offer that?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2112-0601 to order the improvement and preparation of plans for County Road 15 improvement.
Second.
There's been a motion by Maggie, seconded by Rick to approve the resolution. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the Turnback and Cooperative Construction Agreement with Scott County. Is that the same thing that number 4 is?
They're slightly different. and
Okay.
We'll
All
clarify
right.
those, yes.
Okay.
So the next item with this agenda report is the Turnback and Cooperative Construction Agreement for the full project from Main Street all the way up to 12th Street. So that we did receive this from the county. It has been reviewed. It's been, it's very similar to the Turnback agreement that the city council approved in 2019 for the old 37 Turnback. Basically, it covers the county's cost participation policy and that they will, they will pay their share of the cost of the project and how the project will work. And as they have it presented in the agreement, that the city will lead this project, and essentially it'll be the city's project or roadway turned back already before we go into the improvement, but outlines again how they will participate in the cost. With their agreement, there's cost information that's was provided. It was estimates on cost splits, and the county has reviewed this. So in concept, this is all fine. This is all based on estimated costs at this time, not on bid costs. This will be reviewed again. It's again outlined that this will be on actual bid costs and not on just the estimates at this time. So again, this is for budgeting purposes. Their agreement also includes our agreement for engineering services that's been attached. Again, this has been reviewed by the county and by staff, and the county has already acknowledged on the engineering agreement, their agreement to participate in their share of the cost on that. So I guess I'll stop there because the agreement is probably one of the other things here, but any questions on the actual Turnback agreement itself?
I do. Josh, has this been reviewed by our city attorney?
It has, yes.
And we're good to go. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So do you want us to take that as a motion and then you're gonna continue on with the rest?
Yep.
Okay. So does somebody want to offer the resolution in the packet ordering improvement and preparation of plans?
I'll make a motion to approve the Turnback and Cooperative Construction Agreement, County, State, and Highway number 15th as it's presented, and authorize the mayor and city administrator to execute on behalf of the city.
I'll second.
Sorry, I had the wrong resolution.
Yeah, this is actually not a resolution. Sorry, the recommendation is
But you,
Agreement.
city council
I had
approved
it wrong.
the agreement. Yeah.
So, okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, continue on.
Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle with this, again, like I stated, the engineering agreement was included in as an attachment to their agreement, but obviously this is an item that the city council needs to consider and approve. So our engineering agreement takes care of for engineering basically from tonight till the end of the project. So it'll take care of final design, preparation of plans and specifications, bidding, construction administration, construction observation, construction staking, assessments, and record drawing preparation. Just real briefly, outline starting on page 2 of our agreement there. It outlines task 2.1, 2.2. Again, the final design specifications and bidding services. Construction engineering phase 3. You can see some of these tasks are outlined as city and county tasks, city and county tasks, city and county tasks, city and county tasks. And then phase 4, which is what we're calling post-construction services. These are the assessments and record drawings. These are items that don't really apply to the county. They apply to the city, and see these are city-only tasks. So those were broke down as estimates. Right now in the agreement on the very last page, we have a detailed task hour budget. And I think it's page 4 of 4 on that. It does outline, has broken down for the county and the city. Again, the estimated cost based on apportioned construction costs. So again, the county and the city are aware of their share of costs of this agreement. So again, the amount I agree looks substantial, but again, this takes this through completely to the end of the project next fall. Any questions without me getting into a whole lot more detail on the agreement? Again, it's been maybe if there's questions for me or for staff on that.
Council have any questions? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve the professional engineering service proposal.
So moved.
There's been a motion by Sean,
I'll second.
seconded by Maggie, to approve that agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now, we're back to item number 4.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, what was item number 4? Item number 4 is this is for the Main Street, related to the Main Street project. This is related to the roundabout at Columbus Avenue. Typically, we would have brought this in earlier, even before it got constructed, but we had always been in discussion with the county, talking about Columbus Avenue and the turnback and wanting to do this as part of a turnback agreement. And it didn't quite happen in that timely of a manner. But we had them on the hook for a couple reasons. They were part of the full agreement with the state highway. Number 2, we hadn't really even spent any money on the roundabout, their share of the roundabout, until just a few months ago. And we had really, we had them, they wanted to be part of this turnback, so they really wanted to take care of it. So this is basically to cover their costs of the roundabout on Main Street. Again, that's the estimates that have been provided in the beginning, communicated with them, and it was again part of the agreement that all the agencies signed, the city, the state, LeSueur County, and Scott County. So this just covers their cost and their ability to pay the city for their share of the cost. So right now, we'll have the ability to bill them directly for 90%, and we're so close to finalizing the final costs, and we'll end up billing them soon after for the remaining balance, and then we'll be done with them for Main Street, so.
Okay.
So, any questions on that one? And the city attorney has reviewed this one as well, so.
Okay. All right, does somebody want to offer that resolution? Rick made the motion, is there a second?
I'll second the Rick's motion to approve the construction cooperative agreement.
Okay, there's a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You done?
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the public's invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda, and the speakers are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anybody that wants to address the council? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, come on up and state your name and your address, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yep.
My name is Ann Losinski, and I actually live in Cordova Township. And I am here talking about election integrity this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here first of all to remind you how important you are as a local municipal entity. Ours is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that starts right here at the local level. I'm here with a group of LeSueur County citizens concerned about election integrity, and we would like to share some of those concerns with you. Local municipalities are the grassroots of elections in Minnesota. You, as the city officers, are in control of the election process in your town. We feel it is our duty and privilege to come before you to ask for your help in addressing our concerns about election procedures. We citizens of LeSueur County, along with many citizens of the United States, are concerned about what has been happening in the last several elections. Some of our concerns are not the responsibility of municipal government, but we would like to touch on them as a way of sharing our desire for legal, honest, legitimate elections. Our first concern is voter identification. We're required to have ID for driving, boarding an airplane, getting a job, or even a library card. Connecting the real person to a real vote is essential to legitimate election processes. A picture identification begins that process. Our second concern is extended voting before and beyond Election Day. Voting traditionally begins and ends with Election Day. In Minnesota, voters can now cast their vote 45 days before Election Day. With that, Minnesota has the longest early voting period in the country. Tradition and law have always been one election day. This promotes election integrity. Our third concern is secure machines. Machines to count votes make sense. Machines connected to the internet are ripe for hacking. Hand-counted votes or machines that are not connected to the internet ensure an honest election with no outside interference. I would like to share with you a quote from a 2019 committee report of the U.S. Congress. This report expresses the very concerns we have. It was written and signed by national legislators, including Minnesota's Senator Amy Klobuchar. Quote, in 2018 alone, voters in South Carolina were reporting machines that switched their votes after they'd inputted them. Scanners were rejecting paper ballots in Missouri, and busted machines were causing long lines in Indiana. In addition, researchers recently uncovered previously undisclosed vulnerabilities in nearly 36 back-end election systems in 10 states. And just this year, after a Democratic candidate's electronic tally showed he received an improbable 164 votes out of 55,000 cast in a Pennsylvania state judicial election, the county's Republican chairwoman said, nothing went right on Election Day. Everything went wrong, and that's a problem.
1 minute.
These problems threaten the integrity of our elections and demonstrate the importance of election systems that are strong, durable, and not vulnerable to attack. End quote from this U.S. Congressional Committee. Remember, this letter was written in 2019, 2 years ago. Much information has been uncovered about these issues since then, including information about voting machines being connected to the internet, causing more potential interference with voting. Did you know that according to Carol Blaschko, LeSueur County Election Administrator, tabulating machines are optional at polling places? Are you aware that even though your machine may look like it is not connected to the World Wide Web because there is no cord connected to the wall, everyone in this room is connected to the web through your phone. The possibility of every voting machine being connected to the web is likely, and none of us knows for sure. Do you know that precincts have the option of going back to in-person voting? Many precincts are realizing that coming together as a community to vote is of high importance. They miss seeing everyone. They miss the grassroots opportunity to express the freedom to vote in a very basic, tangible way, in person. As city officials, you may not have the ability to directly influence the procedures we have just presented, but we ask you to be aware of them. Election integrity begins at the local level. We encourage you to contact your legislators if you are concerned, as we are, about any of these issues. And finally, I bring forward our primary concern, which is mail-in ballots. And I'm acknowledging that you have in-person voting, that is correct. Okay. But we also know you have a vast circle of influence, family, friends, and citizens. And we would like for those of us who are in precincts that are mail out only to have support from the rest of our county to go back to in-person voting. The purest form of government is at the local level, and election integrity begins there. A chain of custody belongs to each and every ballot. With mail-in voting, all ballots are counted at the county offices. They do not originate at the local municipality. By approving mail-in ballots, a city or precinct has eliminated one step in the security of the voting process. At the city level, we watch our own ballot go into the machine. We know the election judges and we trust them. When we can trust the counting machines, we know our ballot is counted. The chain of custody really begins at elections, where the community comes together at their local city or township. We are asking all the LeSueur County election polls to remain or return to in-person voting, using absentee ballots only for those who truly cannot get to the polls. According to Carol Blaschko, 11 of the 25 precincts in LeSueur County plan to be mail-in only for 2022. She told us this can be changed by the precinct up to 90 days before an election. And that's one thing we'd like you to keep in mind when you're talking to fellow citizens. There is an addendum to this because we have one precinct that has made a formal resolution to the county to go back to in-person voting. We began this process ourselves, recognizing that there were a lot of things we didn't know. We've learned a lot, and we continue to learn about the election process. Our county and municipal officials have enlightened us and added to that knowledge. We're here to voice concerns, as I've said, and hopefully to open up discussion that will benefit everyone. So at this time, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take those, or any comments, and we're open for discussion if you would like.
I want to thank you for coming and explaining that to us. Thank you.
And I do have a packet of
Sure.
information that I can leave for each of you. I don't know.
Sure, just give it to Josh and you'll get it to us.
We want to thank you, you're all here with her, and thank you very much.
Yep,
for
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sorry we couldn't squeeze you in last time you showed up.
That's okay.
Thank
So-
you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, the next, does anybody else want to address the council on matters that are not on the agenda? Otherwise, we'll move on to What? I'm sorry.
Anybody else is coming forward?
Oh, I'm sorry, and I didn't see you. Okay, come on up, state your name and address.
My name is Pauline Baldazzo. I've been here before, the new owner of formerly Flipside. So I'm
Okay.
just kind of, I guess, met with the chief almost a couple weeks ago, just trying to understand, I guess, status, on my application. I think the guys are looking to wrap up construction by December 20th. Kayla had a quote this week, or end of last week, we got the official quote this week on a sprinkler system. That's $18,000. That will take 3 to 4 weeks to install. So I'm just trying to figure out, I don't want to pay that money and not know when I can open.
All right,
So I'm just kind of,
I don't have an answer. Do you want to address that?
Yes, did we have any updates?
I'm continuing the background check. I am gonna follow up with the manager that was hired by Pauline. I'm continuing to pull together, reports and different things with other individuals that are involved in the process there. I did email her this afternoon regarding, where I was at with it.
oh, sorry. I had 3 hours at T-Mobile today, so I didn't get my, sorry, I didn't see
will
that.
continue to follow up with that and, hopefully to have it wrapped up by the end of this week, so that we can get it to the next council meeting.
Okay. I appreciate that. I just didn't know. You'll just let me, I guess I'll check the email if there's anything else. I didn't,
No, I would let you know if I need any
Okay.
further documentation.
okay, all right.
Okay,
Trying to figure out what to do with $18,000 and
I
to
understand.
spend that now or when to hold off on that. So, okay, all right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else want to address the council? All right. The next item is the public hearing on the truth and taxation hearing. 2022 budget and property taxes levied in 2021, payable in 2022.
All right, so this is this is gonna be our truth and taxation hearing as required by the state each year. I will the way we're gonna do it this year is that I'll kind of give a general overview and then I'll kick it off to the various department heads to kind of explain their budgets a little bit to you, as well as kind of their year in review, and then I will take it back and wrap it all up. I will say, as each department head goes, it's kind of split up so that they're only gonna talk once. So if you have any questions, whether it's about their year or their budget or whatnot, I'll ask that you ask that once each person is done speaking. That way, we can kind of keep it rolling, and once we get one particular section done, we can move on if that works for you all. Then not too
Confused, Josh, are we doing that as part of the hearing, or are you doing it after the hearing?
I kind of figured it'd kind of become a conversation as part of the hearing, in a similar way as to if a citizen had a question, and we might try to address it during the hearing. So, if you can, by all means, ask questions at the very end if you would like, but also feel free, once a particular person is done speaking, to jump in if you would like to. So, how we got here, as you all may remember, back on September 20th, a preliminary levy was voted at $4,663,145. This set our preliminary property tax rate at 51.925%, which was a little over a 0.5% increase over what this year's is, which equaled about $308,755. Since that time, we've got we've solidified a few more numbers, such as healthcare, and that actually brought our levy rate down slightly, by $2,267. So the revised preliminary levy that is in front of you this evening, for a truth and taxation hearing is $4,660,878. Ultimately, this is an increase of $306,488, which is a 7.04% over the previous year. How that levy breaks out is that our general fund is what takes up most of that levy. Our general fund is about $3,660,878. Our EDA is about is $50,000, and what we are currently paying into debt service is $950,000. As I said, for a total levy rate of 51.9%. Kind of how this breaks down, the general fund saw an increase of $306,000. A major part of this increase was to cover personnel costs as well as projects for streets and parks. We were able to find $61,736 in reductions across various budgeted line items to be able to keep the cost from going too high. And that general fund also includes a transfer to the golf course to assist with their debt service payments. This amount equals $121,270 and has remained consistent over the last 12 years. The EDA, which has been unchanged, was initially put in place in 2011 at a rate of $50,000 per year to help kind of spur development activities across the city. And as I said, that amount hasn't changed over the last 12 years. Our debt service also remains unchanged from last year and includes annual payments on our debt service for our various construction projects. As a side note, it is down from a high of $1 million back in 2020. So in total, the tax levy will be going up as proposed, $306,488, and this is actually the first increase in the property tax rate in the last 8 years. Just some notables on the budget before I send it over to the department heads. This particular 2022 would be has a proposed expenditures on the general fund of $5,601,783, and that's up about $315,000 or 5.98% over 2021. Our tax capacity for the year is up to just under $9 million at $8,980,000, which is an increase of 5.97% over 2021. 2022 is the 9th consecutive year of growth for the city's tax capacity, starting in 2014. Kind of the trough of where our tax capacity was reached in 2013 when we were down to $5,042,000 after 4 years of decline. Our local government aid is looking at being up 1.88% to $964,655. And as I mentioned, the city's proposed property tax rate for 2022 would increase 0.52% from 51.38% to 51.9%. So I will, if you don't have any general questions, I'll
Can you go back one? Right. So that 121,000 to the golf course, is that per month or a year?
That is per year.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions kind of on the general stuff, I will send it over to Ken.
Josh, I have a quick question. The
Yep.
61,000 in reductions that you guys found,
Correct.
can you tell me how that broke down a little bit, or just a rough idea?
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of that was when we were looking through the various, like, supplies, or, I know our phone services saved us quite a bit when we switched over systems. And a lot of it was just going through and finding the various areas here. Telephones. Just offhand, we took $2,000 off of the repairs and maintenance in our administration budget.
Is that number from last year's, compared to last year's budget? Is that what that number reflects?
Correct. So
Okay.
that particular one's off of last year's budget.
Well, I meant the 61,000. Is that number reflecting
Yes, that's
the
off.
total or the?
Yes, that's reflected off of budgeted items. From our attorney fees, we reduced our 2021 budget by $10,000. Initially in 2021, we'd had that up to $40,000 for criminal legal fees, but seeing kind of a trend in that decreasing, we continue to take money out of that. Again, a lot of these departments, we were able to reduce anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 just on telephone costs by switching over to an internet type system instead of a traditional phone line system.
Okay.
I also believe a decent major one for us was we saw our insurance rates for like city facilities and vehicles went down this year. And so we were able to save a substantial amount of money that way as well. And I think those are the big ones outside of $30 here for this particular supplies we were able to reduce or maintenance or that sort of thing.
So, just going back to the, let's see what this was dated, the October 25th.
Yeah.
General fund discussion.
Yep.
Things like the comprehensive plan and the facility study and whatnot, is that still in the budget for those?
Those are in the budget, but if you may remember, those plans, the comprehensive plan would be coming out of the general fund, correct?
I'm sorry, coming out of what?
The general fund, sorry.
Oh, okay.
But like the facility study, we were taking that out of the fund 499, I think is.
The transfer.
Yeah, so there's a transfer out of that particular fund from revenue we already had. Or not revenue, but funds that we'd already acquired into our like capital projects fund.
Can you go to page 5 for me too?
Yeah.
So the property tax rate is only going up 0.5%. Is that,
Yeah, 0.52, yeah.
and that's the first time in 8 years that's
First time in 8 years, correct.
gone through? Okay.
I believe 8 years ago now it was at about 74, 75%, and so it's come down to what is now the 51.38% where we're at this year.
So essentially the increase is being really driven because of the value of the additional.
But what we've got some additional new homes or businesses as well as the rise in property values.
Right.
Kind of across the board, correct.
I don't know if everybody always, the general public understands that.
I didn't get one of those nice sheets.
Which one?
I didn't get one of those.
This one?
Yeah. No, that's fine.
That
Just
was
so
from
I gotta
October.
follow
That
along.
was from October.
That was from October. No wonder I didn't bring it. Sorry.
We don't have this.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
I thought
hadn't
that was
seen
the same as that. Sorry.
Were there any other questions?
What was the levy amount again? On the first page or the second page?
Total levy amount was $4,660,878.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, I will pass it off to Ken.
You gonna put my slide up?
Yep.
I'm gonna cover planning, department, building department, and then the park board, budget here tonight. We'll start off with planning. So planning does have a pretty substantial increase in its, budget proposed for 2022.
Do we have any of this information?
What's that?
Do we have any of this information? In the
So,
packet?
so this information would be able to be found in the,
General?
under the general fund.
Okay. I'm just trying to follow along.
Yep.
here.
All right, so the planning department budget is up nearly $80,000 or 36.15% in budgeted expenditures for 2022. Majority of that is 45,000, almost 46,000 for personnel, and that's that additional staff member that we have talked about, planner position. I think we narrowed it down to their last budget meeting that shared 50-50 between general fund and the EDA levy. That was slightly offset by the elimination of our seasonal intern position that we've typically budgeted for. Mind you, that was in the past, just under $4,000 that we had for that intern position, but we obviously did eliminate that in that line item for the staff wages. The other big ticket item here is the first half of the comprehensive plan update. We had talked from the total, splitting that up between 2 years, so that's why you see 37,500 remaining in 2022, with the final portion of that being wrapped up in 2023 to, kind of lessen the load. And part of the other rationale for that was we wouldn't be getting the whole update done in 1 year. So breaking that over 2 years is actually a good thing to do. You just basically have to go month by month through the chapters with the planning commission and the council as we go through that. So definitely would not have got that done in a 1 year time period. Other things that were reduced in the operations for budget for planning, it was about $3,800. So total increase in the operations about $33,657. I did want to note, if we did not have that comp plan in the operating expenses for the planning department, we'd actually be down 17.5% in our operating expenses for the year. And again, a lot of that was to do with the phone savings, huge phone savings with that VoIP system that we went to. If you happen to look at the line item breakdown of the planning department, you'll see a couple of line items where we have not expended our funds fully for 2021 yet. Some of those related to supplies. We just haven't done our update of our pens and pencils and all that for the year. We typically do that in December. And then a couple other ones to note that we did have more online permitting activity, so our credit card fees were up a little bit. And then other thing to note, our training and seminar expenses were way down in 2021 here. Most things were offered online and they were very affordable. When they went to that, we're expecting those to jump back up for 2022 when we meet in person again, where you once again have travel expenses and higher fees for the in-person training. So that's kind of the planning department in a nutshell, unless you have any questions about planning department. I can give you just a couple of quick facts. We'll do a full permit report breakdown in probably our first meeting in February like we do every year. But year to date, we're at 26 new homes in the community. We actually have at least one more that we just got submitted the other day. So we'll probably be just under 30 for the year for new homes. And we had a huge uptick in some other permits I'll talk about more in our building summary here, but a couple other quick planning related items. Newbury Commons Strip Mall, Hy-Vee store expansion, were a couple of the big economic development type projects that added tax base here in 2021 that will obviously we'll see the value really come up in future years because those are ramped in on the value, but those are some big ticket ones. I think we had talked before, the Hy-Vee alone, for the money they put into it was about $12 million. That won't all show up on the taxes for the property, but we'll see those continue to pay dividends down the line as well.
Ken, the increase in the personnel costs of $45,630, that's with the new person starting in May, so only a half year?
Yes, May 1st, yes. Sorry, I should have pointed that out.
But does that include the COLA and everything else and the steps and for people within that department?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. And then, well, wait, I got another. Is that position gonna be split up between that salary in the budget process, between planning and, let's say, building or?
Planning and EDA.
Planning and EDA, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yep. Any other questions in the planning department? All right, so building, pretty straightforward on the building. We just have increase of about $24,294 in budgeted expenditures. Majority of that is personnel costs. We have 2 building inspectors and then our planning technician in that budget. Really don't have much else to note in there as well. Kind of a little bit unknown on the fuel prices coming up for 2022. That's kind of the biggest driver in there at this point, but other than that, I mean, we're only up $684 in operating expenses for the building department. So that's largely attributed to more online permit activity with again, the credit card fees. And we'll continue to probably see that continue to go up. One of the big drivers of that this year was the approximately 700 roofing and siding permits we had. The majority of those were applied for online because they're very simple. They can apply online. We can do an administrative issuance of that permit, and then they schedule the inspections, obviously, as they're doing the work and completing that. So that was basically, we typically have about 70 a year. So we had 700, and that started in June, late June through the end of the year. So that was kind of the big issue for the building department, and that did delay one of the other items we didn't expend fully in 2021 here that we'll expend in 2022 and budgeted for was continued maintenance and upgrade of our online permitting system. We actually have a new module that we had budgeted for 2021, and just due to the activity load, we couldn't take the time to get that completed here yet this fall and winter. So we'll be getting into that in the winter here early.
Okay. Just
So that's kind of going to be a carryover. We won't expend it fully in 2021 here, and it shows up on the 2022 budget under professional services.
Okay. The credit card, you said that the expenses are up. Do we charge that?
We do not charge that at this point as an additional fee. We built it into the fee schedule structure that we know we'll have that expense. We also raised our fees to cover that. We have a technology fee.
Okay, is that what?
That's part of that building permit on the fee schedule, and we'll talk about that again when we talk about the fee schedule for 2022 here in the first meeting in January.
Okay.
And people like the convenience of it. We have
No, I understand that, but you know, I go uptown to a couple businesses and right there, the sign says you're paying.
Yeah, we upped our permit fees to cover that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Okay.
So Ken, another question here. So the increase, the 8.61%, 25,294 of budgeted expenditures, does that include the personnel costs, or is that over and above that?
No, that's including the personnel costs.
How do we get an increase without adding a person, a $24,000?
COLA, health insurance.
But the building department's made up of, is there other people, is it just the
3 staff.
3 staff?
Yep.
So with.
And steps.
Steps, COLA, they're all going up, it's a total of 24,000, so
Yeah, the majority of it's really personnel in the building department. We have very little other expenses in that.
it seems really high, but I don't know how steps and.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think was, what was the, workers' comp was up quite a bit too.
Yeah, because workers' comp is increasing statewide.
Yeah, I think that's kind of citywide as well.
But I don't know if there's a way to control that, but doesn't that alarm anybody else on the council that 90% of the entire budgeted is going to personnel costs? I mean, that just doesn't seem sustainable.
Well, I do, personnel costs is a big issue this year, and I can't remember if we expensed any last year, but obviously the survey is a big issue this year, and it is a concern. Obviously, that's one of the biggest costs the city has is personnel costs.
Like I said, that department largely, other than some vehicle expenses, really personnel. I mean, that is what it is.
We have the influence of the new schedule, and as we've talked about in the past, almost all employees are getting increases based on what we.
The compensation study.
And I should point out, the building department, since we brought that in-house, is actually brought in revenue over and above expenses by about 150,000. So there's been no impact to the general taxpayer from the building department since we brought that in-house back in 2008. So I want to keep that in mind as well, because
We're not seeing that.
But we're not seeing that, and.
Yeah, it doesn't always turn out that way every year, but over the course.
Well, I was gonna say, there could be years that
We
goes
have years
the other
where
way.
it goes like that, and like last year, we had a lot of our permits come in at the very end of the year, like for Hy-Vee and all that. They don't show up on the revenue for 2021, because we got all the revenue in 2020, but all the work was done in 21, so we always track it on the longer range, but we're in the black for the building department. It's never cost the city a penny. In fact, we've been to the positive, but we want to keep that as close to zero, you know, net out as we can.
Well, I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up for, as far as the COLA goes, but wouldn't the COLA, I mean, since to Bruce's point, we do a comparison study, every few years. Obviously, we have pay grades that are in place, and then we offer steps. When we do the COLA, I see, and I don't know if this is what's moving that as much, their salaries might be higher and whatnot, but when you tie the COLA to the base salary or the lane that you're in, some people are getting $3,500 to $4,000 raises or COLA, while other people might get $1,200, you know, depending on where they fall in the grading scale. And I haven't done that math, but my proposal, or what I think is, I mean, since we already have the compensation study, like I said, we already have the steps in place that people, those are the raises. I think the COLA should be an aggregate of the entire organization, because some people don't, everybody pays the same for gas, everybody pays the same for heat, and that's the true meaning of COLA, is the cost of living adjustment, is to take that aggregate and then split it up evenly amongst all the employees, as opposed to some people getting $3,000 and $4,000 and others getting $1,100, $1,200, $1,400. And I haven't done the math, I don't know where that is, but that would be my feeling on it, since, again, we already have the other three layers in place: steps, compensation study, and what's not. And the pay grade, I just want to get some feedback from you guys, what you guys think, if you like that idea or not.
I don't know, you know, the cost of living is going up tremendously.
Big time now.
I know,
But
but
it
it's
is for
going up for the
everybody.
same for everybody.
Exactly.
I think that's more of a fair way to do it than tie it to the percentage of, because it really is disproportionate. I mean, if you look at it, the top salaries are going like this, and the other ones are just raising a little bit.
I'm a simple-minded, I understand what you're saying.
And then it just compounds itself year after year. So, you know, because now you're paying another COLA on top of, with a $4,000 raise or a $3,300 raise or whatever it might be. So I just think that's a way to control costs too, or at least make it a little more fair for all employees. I'd just like to get your feedback on it. That's my recommendation, that we look at that, and I'd like to see it implemented personally, but.
I certainly think we can have more discussions about that into the future, and what the, you know, talked earlier about what we want those adjustments to be before the budget, and kind of monitor things. I've said before that the COLA adjustment, to me, is a little mistermed. The adjustments historically have been much greater than the cost of living index and things like that. So it's as I've learned about it, it seems like a method to try to keep your salary schedule in the marketplace, and that's kind of what it's been used for. But it's not really followed, it hasn't followed the inflation rate typically. And a lot of places don't. They call it COLA, but it doesn't really necessarily tie to it. Obviously, right now, inflation is much higher, and we're not gonna follow that. But over the years, it's been much lower, and we haven't followed that either. So but if we don't have some method of assigning some kind of adjustment to the schedule, we run into that problem of not following the market. And then when we do this salary survey, we're gonna have such gigantic problems or issues. Plus, you have the issue of the disparity between the positions of that state requirement of the different, and you guys can describe that better than I can, but you might have some positions that are more heavily with a particular group of people that are not following other people. And that's one of the things we have to watch for, so.
Right, and that's why we do that study, that there is a
Right.
process in place to correct that if we were to find
Right,
that we were
but
out
if you
of whack.
just assign a dollar number instead of a percentage, I think that's where you run into more complications. But to me, that certainly is we could talk about that in the future, but.
I'd be open to talk about it in the future, absolutely.
I would too.
Okay,
Okay. Can you go to the next slide, Josh? So, real quick, I'll kind of tackle the park board with, the pictures up here. So, park board increase of $13,000 or about 45% from the 2021 to 2022. The big ticket item in here is the, first half of the renovation of the Northside Park basketball court at $30,000. We're anticipating 2-year phase-in of that with funds in 2022, and then another $30,000 in 2023 to then complete that year. So that's really the big ticket item. Other than that, we have a $5,000 portable bathroom surround at Memorial Park to take the place of the demoed bathroom that was taken on this year. Actually, it was taken out of service last year, but we demoed it this year. And then we're getting down to the end of our aluminum picnic table changeover. So we have 10 more tables in there for about $6,700. So by and large, it's really the first half budget of Northside Park. Some other projects we completed this year was the Southside Park drainage project there that you can see in 2 of the photos. And that was a 3-year project that we tucked away money and completed here in 2021. And then the picture on the bottom is just to show we've kind of got our prototype picnic shelter completed in our Heritage Park, excuse me, that we plan to use going forward as our design for future park shelters, and can easily bid that out. So that's kind of the big news for the park board for the 2022 budget. And with that, I don't have anything else to note unless you have questions about the park board budget at this point.
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
For the police department, just talk a little bit about our overall increases. With the increase in about 7.68 for wages and benefits. In that, you see just about a 6.58% increase in the actual full-time wages. That was taking into account the transition into the new system and placement of all the officers and all staff. There's also an increase in overtime we're seeing through COVID and then all of 2021, just to cover vacation, comp time off, sick time. We are down an officer right now, so and I think I mentioned this at previous meetings also, that we cover those with a overtime officer, usually just 4 hours a day, and are trying to cover 24 hours period with 2 officers. So we don't have the staffing that we did in the past, but we're covering some of that. So that was a bit of an increase just placed in the overtime budget for that also. And then along with the rest of the city departments, workers' comp premium also went up about 78% for that. When we go down to operating expenses, relatively little change in that, $5,182, about 3.78%. And then following that, there was a decrease in the capital outlay of about 29,000. So we still have a squad car in there for replacement. So we will be looking at bidding that. There has been a delay in fleet vehicles right now. Same reason why you're not seeing a lot of inventory out on the lots. So, I am working with, the staff out at Jeff Belzer's, trying to see when would be the best to order and what kind of timeline is delivery on those vehicles. Overall, that, minimal increase in, the police department budget. The two other budgets that I have are emergency management. That one stays very stagnant also. We had a decrease of $43, and that was based on Patty's input about what the insurance is to cover for our siren sites. And in animal control, there's no change in that budget. 2022 will be the third and final year of our 3-year contract. So in April, May, we would be looking at starting talks about that contract. I know Sandra from Critter Getters had talked to me a couple weeks ago. We were talking, and she asked if I would help look at that contract to draw that up. But that'll be a project we'll be working in 2022 then. And normally we do a 3-year contract on that.
Can you expound on the animal control contract? Do we pay a certain amount per month, or do we get our costs back, or?
The first year of the contract, we looked at that, and we would get, when somebody would, when they would pick up a dog and somebody would claim that dog, we got 25%, or it was 30% of that back to us, to defray some of the costs of our contracted time. She went away from that, because costs were going up. So for the second year and third year, we're not anticipating getting any of that back, but we pay our, it's $1,200 a month for their services as a contracted service.
And they take care of everything.
Yep. Yeah,
When
I
that
mean,
comes down, when that comes up, do you have a better breakdown on how many animals were captured? How many were put in doggy jail or whatever?
yep, normally her invoice comes with how many calls they received, how many cats were picked up, how many dogs were picked up, and how many were returned to owners, or the outcome or disposition of that animal then and what took place with it. So we do get that breakdown. I know because we've contracted with them, I'm trying to change the process of just paying it monthly into paying it quarterly, because we pay the same designated amount. So the first month of a quarter, I would pay 3 months of that contract, and rather than getting an invoice with that information, I am gonna have her just break down those calls per month then, and she'll be able to supply me with those call breakdowns apart from an actual invoice. So we can still track the activity and what's going on, what they're responding to, but we don't necessarily need it tied to an invoice like that.
Thank you. Sorry I interrupted you, dude.
No, thanks. That's all I wanted. Keep going.
Well, that would be about it for animal control, unless you have more questions about it.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Do we have plans for the replacement car, or the car that
Yes,
is needed in another department, the old one?
the Parks Department will be getting one. And then I believe the other, well, if we turn over another one, the city pool car would move then. But yeah, departments have requested vehicles each time we get rid of one.
Okay.
We have not outright sold any police utility vehicles since we started with those.
Okay. What, it's replacing which car? And
They're, the two 20s are on the replacement calendar right now, and they're up in the area of 90,000 miles.
okay, I'm sorry, there's two we're doing this year?
Well, we did not get one done yet this year.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Because of inventory. So, yeah, I would be looking at putting in an order for 2 and doing it as early as we can in 2022, and those would turn over then.
For the Parks Department, is that a new addition to for the parks, or is that a replacing a different
Do they
vehicle?
still have the 2010?
Replace that Crown Vic.
Yeah, it would replace the 2010 Crown Victoria that they used, and they just utilized that by putting weed eaters in the back seat or in the trunk, and they'd go to sites to work in parks and things.
Sure, I was just wanting to know if we're adding to the fleet or
We're
just
gonna be getting
replacing.
rid of one.
Yeah, I believe he was gonna replace it. Yeah. The Crown Vic shouldn't be used anymore. That's all I have, unless you have other questions.
Any questions for Jim? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Steve?
That thing ready to rock?
You bet it is.
Perfect. Just a quick year in review for us at the fire department. We're on pace to respond to 210 calls this year, which is up from 127 that we had last year. 160, 170 is about average for us. We were able to go back to a full training schedule in February compared to not training at all in some months or in groups of 10 in 2020. Took over for Jeremy in January. Jake Kartek took over as training officer. Greg Pint became an assistant chief, and Ryan Kubish became an officer. We held our first open house breakfast at the station, which was a great turnout, great success, and it essentially we combined both of our activities into one day. We finished training our 4 new members that were hired in 2020. They finished their training in the beginning of 2021. And this was our first full year with the take-home Chiefs vehicles. We started them in November, and they're very well received within the community, and it's cut our response time down about 5 minutes for most of the calls. So that has been great. Places we could improve on in 2022, we applied for a DNR grant to try to pay for some of our gear. We were denied. We'll try again in the future. We did not use all of our reimbursable training money that the MBFTE awarded us, basically because we weren't able to train for part of the year. So we look to be able to use up all that reimbursable money. And we hope to have our dance again this year. It's been a couple of years where we haven't had our
calendar.
What's that?
It's on the calendar.
It's on the calendar, yep. So we hope to get back to that. We have some retiring members that retired a couple of years ago that we need to honor. So we're excited to get back into that. As we look forward to 2022, we will probably have 3 to 4 retiring members this year. So we will need to start hiring some new members. Hopefully starting here, we'll get the ad out. I think we have a couple members retiring here in the next month. We hope to order a new Chiefs vehicle to put into service. This will allow us to move our old Chevy pickup back into the fleet for guys to use for training and fire calls, etc. We have raised the funds to buy the pickup itself. We're hoping to get the city and the rural to help us with buying the topper, sirens, lettering, and the radio for that truck. That is part of my capital outlay of $7,500. The rural is okay, their half portion, the other half would be that $7,500. We need to replace 4 sets of turnout gear this year. Each set costs about $2,500. OSHA says it's only good for 10 years, so it needs to be replaced. So to stay compliant, we need 4 sets this year. Looking forward to 2023, we have 0 sets, and in 2024, we'll have 3 sets. So that would be in the supply portion of that. That's where the extra money in the supply portion comes in. Training, most of all of our training continues to be reimbursed by the MBFTE, which is great, and all the training for all of our new members is all covered by the MBFTE as long as they get certified, which is one of our requirements to be on the fire department. You have to be certified. So,
What does that acronym stand for?
Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training.
Okay,
Yep.
Thanks.
So when we hire new people, it used to be about a $2,500 cost to train them. It's all reimbursed now by the state, essentially. The other thing we'd like to add is we'd like to add to our annual firefighter physicals. Every year we do a EKG, lung function test, blood pressure, and a urinalysis. We'd like to add every other year, hearing and vision tests with the blood chemistry test. We would do that every other year. That would be a split cost with the rural. Big thing in the fire service has been physical and mental health. Talking with the people that do these tests for us, they said it's pretty common for most of the departments to be doing that every other year. So we look to add that. And that was part of the extra in the professional services, I believe. Looking beyond 2022, we would like to upgrade that third final chief's vehicle, which would be the following year. We will have the money to purchase the truck. The fire department will have the money to purchase the truck. We can take the equipment off of the current vehicle and put it on that truck, so there shouldn't be any cost to the city or the rural. If we go a little bit farther into our, a little bit farther out, engine 2 is set to be replaced in 5 years. That is a split, that would be a split purchase with the rural. Our current engine 2 is working fine and very functionality, so it may be something that can get pushed out longer. Unless we run into what we ran into this last time when we had to replace the engine where the frame cracked and we were up a creek without a paddle, so. The other big ticket item that would be possibly coming down in the future is the radios. We haven't replaced any of our radios. The ones we have work fine, so we feel just replacing them to replace them is kind of foolish, so we haven't replaced them. If they become obsolete, or if they become where they're starting to all break down and we can't get parts for them, it might be something we might have to look at in the future. The radios.
There's no talk about encryption on those radios, is there? Like we got settled with, the law enforcement and all of a sudden they decided to encrypt.
No, I do not believe so.
Okay.
Jim, do you know anything on your end?
Not that you would need it.
Okay,
No, as far
Okay,
as I know,
good.
we haven't seen anything on our end.
okay. I just, don't wanna buy a bunch of new ones and then have them all of a sudden say a year later, we're gonna encrypt.
Right, and that's why we're
was poor
reluctant
planning.
to buy new radios
Yeah.
now and have some be different, and the ones we have are working. They're just
Okay.
getting old, but they're
Yep.
working fine. So that would be the big things that would be coming down the ladder in future years. And that about sums it up for me. Any questions?
No, but I can relay that, you were complimenting on how fast your response time has gotten since you had got them pickup trucks.
Yeah, do you know, when we started that process, we researched with a couple cities that have done it, and they said you will get people that will complain. It's more of just an education process of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and and we haven't had one complaint, so we're very fortunate that way. We've only had positive feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine you get there 5 minutes sooner than the trucks, you can back them off if they're not needed and not roll the whole.
Yeah, so we have saved in some of our personnel costs as far as like I said, or like you said, some of the other trucks aren't coming because
Yeah.
we can cancel them before they even leave.
Yep.
So we've saved some on that. I think our payroll for this year is about the same as it was last year, and we're up a whole bunch of calls, so. Kind of goes hand in hand with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. Who's next?
I will pass it off to Matt.
Thank you. I don't have a funny saying like my brother does to start off this, so
It's just,
we'll just get right into it. Keep it a little light. So just a little update on the new Public Works Street Department. Street Department had a very busy year with Main Street. Every single day, 1 or 2 guys were down on Main Street assisting, anywhere from locating sewer lines, just helping out random questions. So it was very time consuming, but again, the outcome was well worth it. We had a lot of movement in the street department, started off with a retirement and then some internal promotions. So with that said, we had 2 new employees start in July, and they are working out really well. 2022, the big thing for the street department will be Columbus Avenue North. They already started this winter with assisting, trying to find locations of sewer wise, storm locations, doing some cleaning, just doing some investigation work, and that will continue throughout the winter into the summer. But on the number side of things, Public Works, you see an increase of $2,756. That overall is, the wages are down, but the health insurance is up. I take health insurance throughout the city, and Glenn did not at the time, so that's where that increase is showing up. On the street side of things, you see a decrease, personal cost, overall expenditures. You see an increase of $5,913. That is mainly due to $5,000 we're increasing in the special projects for seal coating. That's going from 135 to 140. We're just slowly falling behind on the streets, how we have been doing a lot of total reconstructions, mill and overlays, but those streets now are in the 4 to 5 year process of getting all the streets done. You try to get them done once every 4 to 5 years, so we're just adding more streets to that. But then you see a decrease of $40,500 in the capital. We are putting $0 in the capital this year. We are getting a plow truck, and that is, as right now, planned to, or the plans would be to get a plow truck, a 5-ton plow truck, and that would be coming out of the 499 account. The next slide kind of shows you the breakdown of the public works from streets to parks, how often they were out, January, February, March. I would say this is a little down from our average that we have had in the past. Not that the guys are complaining one bit, but you can see the red is how often we cleaned Main Street last year for those 3 months only. We were only out clean Main Street 4 times. That is way below average. As you can see how often we were out. Throughout those 3 months, a lot of those are light snowfalls, 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch snowfalls. A lot of those times you do not have to do Main Street. So the 4 times in those 3 months is way down compared to what we normally do for Main Street. Next, for the Parks Department, just a little review. The Parks had kind of a challenging year. Started off right away in February when they having to replace an engine in the tool cat, which ended up being a $15,000 repair. Again, that repair, the only benefit, not that there's a lot of benefits in replacing an engine, but it did push that back. It was scheduled to get replaced in 2023. We're looking at trying to push that back until 2025, but we will review that every year. We had a few struggles. Again, we talked about it in the past, but getting part-time help, we ended up finding just enough of part-time help, but it was the week of when everyone was supposed to starting. So that was kind of a challenging. One of the good things that turned out this year, spring, I decided we should do a baseball meeting with the school and everybody involved with Memorial Park baseball field. And we ended up coming up with a pretty good game plan that the school ended up helping us for about a month and a half. They did a lot of the cutting up there during the high school season. We ended up having a spring day with the city staff and 2 of the school staff members. So we ended up getting a lot of stuff done early in the year. That's something first time we did that, and we actually ended up doing a fall day at the baseball field that just actually took place last week with the nice weather. So we ended up getting a few projects done that we weren't anticipating being able to get done, but that helped out a lot. We also did have a new employee start with one of the 2 full-time employees leaving. He started in November, and he's been here for about a month and is working out really well. I guess I'll just bring it up real quick and we can discuss it later on. Last Thursday, we had a street department was doing some tree trimming at Northside Park, and during their tree trimming, they ended up finding what looked like potential ash borer disease. We had a couple city staff members that are very familiar with that look into it, and that is exactly what they believed it was, but we did not, without having Minnesota Department of Agriculture out and review it, we didn't feel comfortable saying for surely that's what it was. City staff met with them today, and it was determined that these 2 trees at Northside Park do have emerald ash borer disease. It is the first 2 trees in New Prague, and they were both obviously on Scott County. They did do a bunch of reviewing throughout all of city. That is all they can see as of right now, but it will be something we have to take a close eye on. The big reason we also bring this up is coming years, especially starting next year, we will be doing a lot more reviewing of trees, doing tree inventory like we planned. So again, the proposed added staff member would be, this will come in very handy. But I think that's something we can also review down the road a little bit with council and kind of give them more information on it. But that kind of bounces into why you see an increase in the Parks Department of the budget expenditures and the personnel cost. This is due to proposed additional full-time staff members starting in May. Again, that just add that Ashboard disease to the list of things we've talked about the last few months already about budget meetings and the need for another full-time staff in the Parks Department. You can see the decrease of operating cost. No change in special projects. We still have the steel coating, walking path, same dollar amount. Main Street Flowers is still at the 300. We are lucky to have the New Prague Chamber in town. They donate 90% of the flowers on Main Street and a couple pots by the Brana. So that number on Main Street is closer to around that $2,000 mark, but Chamber donates some money towards it. On the stormwater, just a quick little review. We had in the 2021 budget, we have purchased a UTV. That UTV has helped out staff quite a bit, and we've actually, other departments have used it a little bit here and there, but you get it around the ponds, spraying ponds, doing cleaning inlets. Something the staff doesn't just have to walk around the ponds, they actually can get right up there with pieces of equipment that they can use. Makes it a lot more handy. Street department also, every year they clean inlets around ponds. This takes about a week to 2 weeks for 2 guys to do it. Just to go over a little bit of the numbers, projected to add 12,630 to the reserves. Increase of 10,047. Again, there's no increase to the rate, proposed rates to the stormwater. You see an increase of 7,218 to the budget expenditures. That is due to benefits. We're looking at upgrading our GIS and appreciation. Just a couple of pictures. Top left, that is the guys cleaning out catch basins. This is done every year, and around this time of year, they're actually still doing it. This is about a 3 to 4 week process. Every catch basin in town gets cleaned out. It's usually from leaves throughout the fall. This keeps it out of our ponds and ends up causing issues down the road. Top right picture, this is actually just taken last week with the nice weather. Parks Department and school. We're out there doing some edging of the baselines. This will just make it easier in spring when the season starts. And the bottom picture is of the Dozinki Festival, which was back on this year, on Main Street this year. And then we have the waste treatment plant. Oh, where do you start? Started off with the failed whole influent toxicity test. That has been very challenging. We have ongoing been working with John Peterson from Bolton and Mink. This is really going to get, we've pretty much filed for extensions this year, and that will be really dug into big time next year. We ended up having some changeover in staff. We ended up hiring 2 staff members. One left, and then we had to hire his replacement, and then he just started about a couple weeks ago, about a month ago probably. A couple other challenges we had this year. We had a lightning strike at Columbus and 12th Street. That's, I would say, is about 99% complete. It's working properly. It's just some more stuff with SCADA talking to the computers and stuff like that. That has to kind of be finished up. The big scare we had for about 5 days and sleepless nights the waste treatment plant had was the main lift station, which is located behind the bus garage. We had 2 pumps go out and 1 overflow pump that all went out in 3 days. This is absolutely unheard of. Never has. I told the guys to buy a lottery ticket. That it just does not happen. The one great thing that ended up happening is that so there's 2 overflow pumps back there. So we were living off of one overflow pump that's over 20-some years old. Again, we kept our fingers crossed, and we ended up getting one of the pumps replaced about 5 days after the first pump ended up going out. So again, special thanks to the staff at the waste treatment plant for their sleepless nights during that period. But right now we have 2 pumps working, and then looking at replacing the overflow pumps this year, next year. We also, after all, that was 2020, the fire happened in the biosolids room. We finally completed that project this spring. The fire alarm system was installed and working properly. Some of the big items for 2022, working with Bolton Mink on the wet test, which is the whole influent toxicity test. Also getting fiber out to Central Avenue South Lift Station so it can talk with the SCADA. And then also, like I said, replacing the 2 bypass pumps behind the bus garage. Again, like to I want to put out there that 0% increase on the sanitary sewer rates. Just to kind of go over the numbers again, projected to dip into the reserves, 536,508. That's interest on debt services. Increase of 88,000 or 2.61 in total revenue. So we're looking at an increase of 287,000, 7.72% on total expenditures. And that comes from personnel cost, operating costs. The operating costs we are looking at projected on the high end, the wet test at 75,000. That's 25,000 in engineering and 50,000 in testing. Again, hopefully we find the needle in a haystack right away and we save a lot of money on the testing, but that's projected cost. Again, we're looking at chemical costs skyrocketing. It's crazy. We're being told 20% increases this year, and that's the famous thing. They always say is COVID. So that's what we're looking at right now. 170,000 in depreciation assets is kind of where all these numbers kind of come up to the 227. 544 in operating cost. That bottom left picture is of the biosolids storage room. Kind of just shows you that the project has been completed, completely repainted, all new wiring, fire alarm system, like I said, finished up. The right picture is of our clarifier room. This is something they kind of have to do periodically just to break up the solids, and that's what you see that staff members doing. With that, I'll take any questions.
I don't. Anybody else?
Yeah, the new plow truck that's coming out of 499, what's the remaining balance of that 499?
Bill, I'm sorry.
The plow truck for 220,000.
Yep.
Yeah, we had talked about either doing equipment
Oh,
certificate.
I'm sorry, yes.
Or taking some of fund balance, or we could actually, we're thinking and kind of hoping that we might be able to use the American Rescue money that we received.
Okay. What, the balance of that 499 fund, what is it right now? Is it, or roughly? I thought I had it in here somewhere, but I couldn't find it when I was.
Yeah, I think it's
That was
127,000, and we actually are gonna do a transfer of 90,000 out of that. 228,000.
228, okay.
But now we were projecting to take 90,000 out for 2022. Transfer to the general fund for the studies.
Oh, okay.
So that plow truck was not anticipated to come out of that account next year then?
No.
It wasn't part of the obviously the 90.
No, that was my fault, I apologize.
Okay. But that is scheduled to be purchased next year?
That is correct.
And it is part of the CIP plan last year that it was gonna be done this year then?
No, the plow truck is planned for next year, it was never planned for this year.
Right, I just can't recall it, so I was wondering, was it on the plan last year to purchase it next
Oh,
year?
yes, it was, yep. That's under the 15-year plan, and that's a 2007.
Yes, that's one of the,
And that's why you said we talked about possibly an equipment certificate and stuff like that. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Otherwise, next.
Well, I did have,
Oh.
I apologize, I just can't recall on Cedar Lake, because we're dipping into reserves, it doesn't affect the fees or the cost, and therefore Cedar Lake doesn't really absorb any of the additional operating costs that we have there. Am I looking at that right?
I think you are correct, but I would have to look into that for you.
So the only way Cedar Lake is really affected by the increasing cost of operating it is if we
Raise our
raise the
rates.
fee, and then
Yes.
everyone in New Prague as well
That
would
is
be
correct,
doing
but-
it, so,
I'm 99% sure, but I can definitely look into that.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next.
Okay, Kurt,
Of course.
you can use Steve's microphone. It has his name on it, but.
Okay, I'll put my name on it here. No, I just want to thank everybody for the chance to give you some insight here. First of all, Matt, I need you to keep that ash borer in Scott County, if you wouldn't mind. We've got a lot of trees in LeSueur County. Couple of highlights. It's pretty rare, but we've actually benefited from the COVID pandemic over the last couple of years here. Mostly in our rounds of golf, so it's I've got a lot of good nice information here that'll give you guys. I don't really want to say a warm fuzzy, but I just did. Anyway, just quick, our rounds of golf that are played at the facility. That's a number that we use a lot through budgeting and planning and things like that. And we had a fairly rainy 2019, and we only recorded 18,205 rounds in 2019, but last year, meaning 2020, those rounds of golf went up to 29,550, and that's over 11,000. And most of it last year was reacting to it. So I want to compliment my staff and the council help, the city help, everything, because we had some obstacles last year, but we got over them. And with that huge increase, we were kind of looking at what was going to happen this year, but we actually beat that number again this year. We got up to nearly 32,000 rounds of golf, which is up over 2,400 from what was pretty much a record year last year. So very, very happy with that. The membership is strong. We have this past season, we had 321 memberships, which is the highest I can attest to since 2011, when I was on the previous management team then. I kind of gauge it, without having all the numbers and insight at my fingertips that Patty has, with just the fees collected in the golf shop. Last year to date, we were at about 895,000. And this year to date, we're over 1.1 million. So it's been a great asset and a great situation having players coming out to play golf, and I feel like we're dealing with them properly, because I always tell the staff you can't make people come out there to play golf, but you can make them come back, and that's what's happening. Most of that increase this year in the rounds of golf there were a lot of events, fundraisers and stuff that didn't gather last year with all the concerns. They did this year, so we basically were able to accommodate that influx of over 11,000 players, plus another dozen or so 100-player events, mostly fundraising activity and things like that. Some of those fundraisers that we're fortunate that they choose our facility, because they can do it anywhere, but they choose our facility, so we're fortunate there. We help support by hosting their event, Bags of Smiles, the Matt Shetka Foundation, New Prague Hockey, New Prague Wrestling, New Prague Football, St. Wenceslaus School. There's an alumni event. It starts with the word horse, but I'm not going to add the second four-letter name to it. But it provides dollars for charities in town. Buck Summer Classic is a great, the Buckingham family from New Prague, they organize that, and they help feed vets that are unable to get out and about. John Cockey Memorial Scholarship chooses to have their event there, and then we started a new alumni event this year with alumni golf golfers, which benefited our junior golf. And so, again, very fortunate that. Other events that we host out there, and again, they're choosing the facility here in town. We host the Minnesota River Conference Golf Championship, which New Prague High School is not a part of. These are all visiting schools. The Section 2A Championship, again, smaller schools. Minnesota PGA hosts, we had 2 junior tour events out there this last year. The Gustavus Invitational had 1 day at the New Prague Golf Club this year. I have a pretty good relationship with the head coach there, and they used to practice down at the LeSueur Country Club, which I used to be the head golf professional at as well. But and then locally, we do the New Prague Trojan Invitational. We have a great New Prague area event. We call it the New Prague Ryder Cup. It's our in-town course here versus players from Creeks Bend, and it's pretty cool how strong golf is in this small community. We can support 2 18-hole golf courses. We've also hosted Eden Prairie Baseball Group, which I love that as a feather in the hat, because they could play numerous other venues. And then we started a mother-daughter event that went over really well this year. We also, our leagues are strong. We have a junior league of over 100 players, which is great. Prior Lake VFW chooses to drive here for their league. We have a Wednesday ladies, Thursday men's, Friday couples. We have a Wednesday morning senior league, and then a men's club group that meets twice a month on the weekends. And you know, these numbers have been, I know I've gotten a lot of smiley faces on the emails from Patty, which is nice. But the numbers are, you know, a testament to new players coming to the game, but they're also a testament to the quality of our facility too. And it's both the grounds and the staff. We get a lot of compliments. I'm very proud of that. Cause like I said, they don't have to come here. We have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 9 golf courses within a 30-mile radius of us here, and they can play anywhere. And one of the challenges is to draw them to our facility, because just because you're a resident of New Prague doesn't mean you have to play at the New Prague Golf Club. They can go wherever they want, or wherever they want. So we have a lot of competition, but we need to maintain our product, and we have a pretty good product there right now. Again, this season, the numbers were due to one of the longest golf seasons we've ever had. The days on a calendar between April 1st and October 31st total 214. That's what the state of Minnesota recognizes as their golf season. We had 245 days this year, so it was great. But it didn't come without some challenges, I guess, one of which, you know, is irrigating the property. It's 110 acres. And we found firsthand with the, you know, some of the problems with the lift and the pumps, how it affects our water supply out there. But staff did a great job, only watering when necessary, doing smaller double waterings instead of big soakers and things like that. But, you know, that all being said, it kind of leads into the budget that we're proposing for you guys. And off of that slide, that, you know, the increase in revenue, I would be shocked if you're not all looking at it saying, well, how are you going to do that? Keep in mind that's from the 2021 budget to our proposed 2022, where in the meantime we've exceeded our 2021 budget. So as a staff and our board of directors, we feel that's very attainable. It's not 103 above and beyond what we did this year, because it's compared to the 2021 budget. So we're ahead of that this year, so we're on a good pace there. Slight increase in membership dues, and that's a minimal increase. The season range passes and then the alcohol sales, those look like huge increases. Those are just numbers to get us back in line with some of the competition. Our range passes, we'll sell 20 to 30 of those. We raised it, you know, from $95 to $125. So that's a significant increase, but it's not overwhelming like a printed number looks. I just want to make sure and give you some insight on that. Alcohol sales, again, too, that's from last year's budget. So we've already year to date accumulated numbers beyond last year, so it's a slight increase, from the 2021 budget. But, one of the main items you'll see on there, actually, yeah, right there. You know, just going through the, expenses, operating costs, the maintenance number, yeah, that's correct there. A lot of that has to do with, the irrigation and the water. We had a year this year where we drew from it quite a bit, so we wanted to, make sure we covered it for next year, hoping not to use it. Increase in food and beverage, is going to start, we're gonna start seeing some of those numbers actually this week. We're gonna incorporate and, do kind of a soft start for some, lunches that we're gonna have at the facility. If any of you've been there, we've got one of the best spaces in town, on our third floor there with the windows around. So we're gonna ease into it, keep track of the costs, and start serving lunches and get that in place for next year. So we're very confident in that increase. The personnel costs are, a lot of the numbers come from Patty on that with the staff increases and things like that. But kind of what I'm getting at is that, you know, I want to just give you an oversight or overall picture of what's happening out there. And it's been very positive the last 2 years with the number of people visiting the town, with the number of people in town participating. And you've seen the numbers on a monthly basis they've been very good. And what we're noticing now is we're taking a harder look at our equipment. And I know there were some comments in some of the other departments tonight, where 90,000 miles on a police car means it needs to be replaced. We have a list, that's in your larger packet there, of our equipment. That most of them are concerns, but there are 4 that are truly needs. So we're asking for what looks like a significant number in the bond request to upgrade them. There's 4 items for sure. I had our superintendent and full-time city employee Jeff Pint create his top 4. And one of them is a rough mower. Now it has the hours that are on that piece of equipment are the equivalent, and there's a formula out there where you take the hours times 60 to get the equivalent of miles on a vehicle. We have a rough mower that has the equivalent of approximately 375,000 miles on it. That's first and foremost. I believe it's about a 15-foot cut, and it goes into the shop weekly to be maintained and sometimes fixed. We have two units that we would like to replace that mow the greens. Again, with the fact that a lot of these events choose us, the condition of the golf course has a lot to do with it, and our putting surfaces are one that we get the most comments on. And by upgrading the greens units, you'll see some pretty old machines there. Now they're not going to be retired. What we do is we have some newer units that we're mowing with right now. The new ones would replace those. Those would go into what we call, to mow our tee boxes, and then we repurpose the oldest ones with some specific maintenance that enhances the playability with like vibrating rollers and then a thatching, a verticutting type reel. So we don't put them to pasture. They get repurposed. And then our youngest machine that we'd like to replace has the equivalent of 170,000 miles on it, which is it's just a bunker machine to work up the sand and smooth it out. A lot of the equipment, we're running into close to a 16% increase from the last time our chart was made up. And we do have some other items on there too, but we're ultimately asking for the amount of money that the council would be willing to bond for equipment upgrades at the golf course. But I feel confident that we're in a position to fund those with the last 2 years that we've had. Otherwise, pretty much the only hospitality, department in town, so I'm very happy with the staff, and, all of the events that waited a year and came back this year already booked the corresponding dates for, next year, so to me, that's the highest compliment there, but, I don't know if anyone has any questions, on any of the numbers or any of the, information I gave. I have some backup here tonight. Chuck Nicolai we were fortunate to have him, kind of stay on board after his, stint, as the mayor, to oversee, our budget, assembly and things like that. He worked really hard on that. We, inputted numbers that he put in across the sheets there, so, I may defer a few questions to him, but, does anybody have any questions or comments on the golf course department?
What were you gonna do with that restaurant again?
Oh, we're gonna, open it up for, public lunches, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday,
And
Thursday,
then, we do have a number of, holiday events, that have taken place, or that are scheduled, here coming up, so, we're also gonna look into the feasibility of, maybe a Friday or a Saturday evening dinner, but this would all be, a Facebook, a website, possibly a New Prague Times type marketing situation.
And you had a soft opening and a date on
This
Saturday.
Wednesday, yeah, this coming Wednesday from 11 to 2. We're finalizing, some menu items, and, the supply chain, like everybody has felt, is tricky, so we're doing some, last minute repositioning of some items there, but it'll be open to the public.
I have a few questions, Kurt, if I could. I would totally, from my perspective, totally agree with your comments. I think I think the golf course has really performed very well. As you said, the weather, the season, the COVID effect of more people staying at home and more people wanting recreational activities is kind of a perfect storm for golf courses in general the last few years to have such a great turnaround on it. And I would hope and like to think, like a lot of other businesses, the COVID effect for a lot of the businesses probably may not be as strong in the future, but a lot of it will hang around, especially for golf courses, I believe, because people will still be staying at home, more people staying at home, more recreational demand, that type of things. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be as good as it was. I think, from my perspective, I think this year is probably the perfect storm of everything going right as far as demand for it. I think the things you're talking about are all great things. I really would appreciate and encourage you to continue doing your marketing activities that you've done and the things you're talking about doing, especially getting outside groups. And I think that's been a hallmark of the golf course in the past. And it's great to hear and see that you're doing a lot more of that promotion and solicitation and that kind of thing. And having said all that, the biggest concern that I have, from the city's perspective is that the golf course and the fitness center are two of the more financial risky enterprises of the city, because they really are more retail and really, it's not like utilities where we control the inputs and control. You can't hook your toilet up in Carver County to New Prague. We got the business here, we're locked into it, but like you said, you have to attract the golf people. So it's a different business and it presents different risks to the city, and we know our history with the golf course. It's not always been financially strong. But so that's just a comment more than anything else. I think that I'm glad that you have a total revenue number that's lower than what you're going to get this year. So that's kind of looking at some of those things, but just the risk is there. We might slip back into a 2019 revenue thing, and then the projections really start to get a little more challenging because we're instituting personnel costs and fixed costs to this operation, and we're still depending upon weather and things out of our control to try to achieve that revenue number. So you guys know all this. I'm just kind of reiterating the risks that we have.
And if I may, real quick, we started with just rounds of golf is those were my first comments. This year we had nearly 32,000 to produce the numbers that we have year to date, which are exceptional. We didn't use 32,000 in coming up with our numbers for the 2022 budget. We used only 27,000 rounds of golf, which is less than in the last 2 years, and we were still able to piece that in there and come out with a good outcome too. So,
And I really applaud that. I think that's a good way of looking at it. But just because I've been around the block a few times and I've looked at the New Prague Golf Course statement for many, many years.
inside out.
You know, there's good and bad depending on what the weather does for you, and it just has to rain on weekends to screw everything up.
Right.
It's a unique business in that way. But, so I would just encourage everyone to stay mindful of the fact that, you know, there is some leverage involved here in it. And if we have to go back to a 2019 number, you're talking about, you know, over $100,000 change in revenue loss in the projection, so it's easy to go backwards.
Yep, and that was kind of, that was our thinking, to start revving up the food and beverage or the inside activity, in case we do get caught with weather to have an indoor type option to still produce. It would be a smaller number, but to have that, revenue stream, which we haven't really had in the past, so.
So one of the other questions I had with green fees is, it seems to me that, and I appreciate all the information you gave us, the green fees, is it just a fair generalization that the membership green fees is about half of the total?
Roughly.
And I guess my question is, that trend changed over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Well, in the last 2 years, both of them have expanded, but we have expanded the membership.
Well, I'm kind of
numbers.
interested in the percentage. Are we having more membership green or players out of that total rounds?
Yeah, that number has risen in the last 4 years at this facility. Overall, in general, I think a lot of players are tending to play multiple golf courses versus being a member at one of them. And 2 years ago, we got involved with Twin Cities Golf in a program that's called the Public Country Club, and they sell their patrons a card so they can play a discounted rate at a number of area golf courses, which the New Prague Golf Club is one. And the way we're compensated for that is we document the number of rounds. You'll see that on, I don't know if you guys have the 2022 proposed budget in your booklet, I believe you do.
Yep.
It's listed on page 8 there, like what you were saying under greens fees, and towards the bottom, you see a sales item called PCC. Now those are rounds of golf that were never played at the New Prague Golf Club. And we get a report every year from them where last year we had over 500 rounds of golf through that program that were players that had never played the golf course before. So that seems to be a trend. That's why I'm very happy with the membership numbers. Those people tend to come out socially a lot more than the greens fee players do. So, there's just a lot of ancillary items that are purchased by the players when you get them to the facility, that. And so I'd like to, continue to keep that membership number strong, but to fill the open tee times, that's the key.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to get at, it seems that maybe membership rounds played by memberships is making a bigger part of the total, and therefore you're kind of increasing the membership's cost or fee because of that.
Yeah, it only boils down to about $3,000 across the board when we raise it 2%, so it's minimal. I'd rather sign up 2 new members personally than raise them 2%. You get the same outcome at the end, but you get more. Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be green fee. At a time, green fee players kind of drove the profitability
Yeah,
all of the profitability of the golf course.
there were 650 memberships at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as I was starting to say, I would just encourage, I know you have a special projects number that's new this year, and I'm not sure what that's all about, but I don't need to necessarily know, but because they're so weather dependent, I just encourage us to delay and defer until we get into the season on some of these things and try to reduce your risk so we don't end at the end of the year with, rainy August and our income going significantly negative by the end of the year.
Yep.
But as far as the equipment purchases, I totally support it. I'm not sure how you fund it. When you say fund those with the last 2 years of activity, are you saying that the cash flow of the golf course would be able to support that? Because one of the long-term goals, I think, is that the city is not going to continue to put in $121,000 a year, but, so I'm not sure when you said that, what you meant by that.
Trying to remember back to my comment on that, but
Or how do you feel the equipment would be, when you're asking for it, are you asking the city to pay for it?
no, just to bond the money so we can make the purchase and upgrade the equipment, and then we'd be making the payments over.
So the operation you feel could support making the payments?
I do. Page 6 of the budget there shows our outstanding debt, starting with this year through 2026, and we have numbers that will come off if we are able to obtain that equipment in 2022. I believe the numbers actually fall into 2023, and then starting in 2024, there are a lot of general fund loans, or two general fund loans, and another funding loan that goes off the books.
That would be assuming the city continues to put in $121,000.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Are you anticipating the end of the year to be break even then? About?
With the 121 in or out?
Oh, well, I don't consider the transfer in being income myself, but the financial statement at the end of October, I think, was 100-some thousand revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just kind of guessing that the golf course will probably break even before the transfer in. Is that kind of where you're at?
It'll be, Patty, what would you say to that?
Well, if you refer to page 5 of their budget.
Yep.
See? So at the very bottom, they're projecting a negative 43,000 to 11.
For next year.
Right.
Right.
But then, just to give you a little bit more detail, if you factor in the transfer, but you take out the debt payments, and add back depreciation, you're looking at about 54,000. Yeah.
Right, and I'm just kind of hoping.
Bruce, I think you're correct, and it's probably really close to break even.
Okay, and I guess where I'm going with that is that it seems like we're.
There's the fixed cost that you have, labor and
right.
Contract and that stuff, with hardly any revenue coming in
Right.
November and December.
Right, at the end of October, it's $118,000 revenue over. And I'm kind of hoping that it does break even at least that, so that would mean that the cash available this year is going to be over 100,000. So I'm just saying that's a very positive thing, and encourage that reserve that we're going to have this year to try to kind of protect it, that we kind of continue to build a reserve to reduce the financial risk in the future. So I'm just looking at this year. I was just wondering if you felt that I'm assuming we're going to eat up the 118,000 with fixed costs for November and December, and unless guys are golfing still.
No, they're not golfing.
But, so we're gonna pretty much eat it up, but even if we break even, we're gonna have a positive cash balance at the end of the year. And that that strong of a cash balance we haven't seen for a very long time. So
I agree with you.
I would congratulate all that you've done and the numbers that you put into the budget. It's a very tough budget to work with.
A lot of moving parts, a lot of unknowns too with the weather and.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Nope, just a good job, guys.
I just have a quick question on the bond request. I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. So if we bond that 264, that number is going to, that 130,000 next year in 2023, before it really drops off in 2024. Do we have a rough estimate what that number is going to be?
I guess what are these bond out at? About 15 years, isn't it?
Well, we can actually do whatever we want
set
with the
that.
bonding. So,
I'm just curious what that, if that 130,000 is going to be 180,000, or is it going to be the principal and interest if we bond this year for, or 2022, we will have payments and interest.
So, I mean, if we can dictate the length of time we bond for, that would dictate what that 2023 amount is over and above.
What are we thinking? Do we know right off the?
John, I think in our golf board budget, when we first initially did it.
Right.
I had the amortization schedule, and it probably would add 42 to 50,000 if you amortize the whole 264 at 4% interest over 7 years. So it would add roughly with principal and interest anywhere between $50,000 and $60,000.
Okay.
And I hope that we're gonna have more conversations about that before just tonight, because I think we should probably talk about 2023 and 24. If we're gonna do a bonding, or try to put it into a bond that might not incur until fall of next year, would that be accurate? So we really need to figure out if we agree to do this, how we're gonna get you the funds before then.
Mm-hmm.
You want this equipment by spring, I would assume.
If it's available, yes.
And our bonding doesn't occur till later.
right.
But I would think that it'd be nice to have some conversations about trying to capture some of the 2023 and try to make it a meaningful number instead of 200. 264 is a small number.
And then would it be general obligation bonds versus, because this is for equipment,
It would be a geo bond.
it would be a geo bond, okay.
You know, you also have a capability of having smaller principal payments and then having larger ones at, toward the end. So when it really drops off here
Sure.
is when you could add more principal to it. So it's just how you'd want to design it, and in this case, I probably would go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure some of the small items are really meant to go 7 years, if that's a good number or not, but.
Well, usually hard equipment like that, I mean, it's a piece of machinery, usually in the accounting world, you do amortize them a minimum of 7 years.
Again, you can change that up too.
Yep.
Because I know what we do sometimes with the, we took out a couple equipment certificates in the general fund for the streets. I think we did like 5 years. We did that for the utility as well, so.
Right. I personally support it, and I think you try to make hay when the sun shines, and trying to do what you said, Patty, even it out over a longer period of time. Get the equipment going, that would help issues in the future if we had bad years again.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Appreciate all the input. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
And I will pass it off
Thanks, Chuck.
to Bruce.
You guys need a seventh inning stretch or not? Holy cow. Start out with the water department, and obviously we had a good year in no small part thanks to Kurt and the golf using a lot of water out there. Nonetheless, we sold about 246 million gallons of water this past year. That's up about 32 million over budget for what I had budgeted. just a good old hot, dry summer, so, and that yielded about $116,000 in revenue. For the 2022 water budget, I'm projected to add to the reserves or have a net positive income of about $198,000. And that's down a little bit from 2021. It's down, we were at about 295 in 2021, and it's primarily due to debt service and depreciation costs going into 2022. There is an increase of around $90,000 in overall revenues, and that is driven by a couple of things. A rate increase of 3%, and that's for all commercial and residential usage rates. An increase of $1 per month for residential and commercial base fees. And then I'm projecting about $33,000 worth of revenue in water sales over 2021. Overall, that increases to about $1.60 a month for the average New Prague resident in added cost to their water bill per month, and that's kind of based on about $4,000 or 4,000 gallon monthly usage averaged over the whole year. A big part of adding $1 to the base fees is the utilities is going to take over the responsibility of service lines from the water main to the customer's curb stop, therefore eliminating costs to the customer should they have a leak in that service line. We're going to cover those expenses, and we figured that into this 2020 budget. And we'll look at it each year to see how we're doing to make sure we're recouping cost of those. But typically, we only have between 3 and 6 of those a year. So, but we plan to, and a lot of those, the utilities can make those repairs ourselves. We have the equipment to do so, unless there's a lot of frost. The 2022 budget projects an increase of $188,000 in overall expenditures. Those increases or decreases are broke down in the following. Increase of $96,000 in source of supply. Really, that's broke down into about $55,000 in depreciation and $42,000 in debt service. That really is a result of having a $1.6 million Main Street project this past year that we have to start depreciating for and start collecting for debt service for that. Decrease of $5,000 in distribution, and really that is just a change from 2021 and not having to do an emergency response plan. We had consultants help us with that at a cost of about $20,000 in 2021. We won't have those in 2022. Increase of $88,000 in A&G. 43,000 of that will be for employee compensation, and we also have one employee. We had him for we brought him in a half a year this year, so we'll have a full year of his wages going into 2022. And then the balance is in operating expense. Just some quick notes in regards to the water department. In 2022, we'll have about $1.6 million in CIP cost overall. $1.1 million of that is attributed to the new building that we're doing out here. That was actually approved in 2021, but most of those expenses will be coming out in 2022 for the new building due to the late start and the availability for materials and that type of thing. I had budgeted in about $425,000 for the Columbus Avenue project. That may come in a little bit less depending on how far we go with some water main on that project. And then the balance in distribution upgrades and equipment. Just a heads up, our projections are kind of showing that going forward here for the foreseeable future, and I'm going to say that being 3 to 6 years for sure, we're kind of projecting 2 to 3% rate increases each year going forward. We're going to do a rate study in 2022, and I think what's going to come out of that, we're one of very few communities that have just a standard rate across the board in regards to our water consumption. I think we're going to end up going to tiered rates. It's pretty much being forced by the DNR as a conservation measure, but nonetheless, there'll be a tier for, say, up to 4,000 gallons, and then 4 to 8, there'll be another level of what that rate would be, 8 to 12. It's on a step rate process. Other than that, we, like I said, we had a really good year, really productive and a busy year with Main Street. We replaced almost 7,000 feet of water main and 123 services. 23 of those being 6-inch fire protection services to commercial businesses downtown. It was more than double of what we thought we were gonna have. Nice to see that our businesses downtown are planning for the future and making those provisions should they ever wanna add fire service to their buildings. That's really all I have for the water department, unless there's some
Were
questions.
there any lead lines on Main Street yet?
Yeah, I think, not too many though. I believe, only 2 or 3 of them.
Oh, interesting.
And we kinda knew that going into it, that
Yeah.
there wasn't too many of those, but.
Cool. Go on. Unless if somebody else has questions.
Anything else?
Sorry, I don't wanna cut somebody off.
On the electric side, almost $9.2 million or $9 million in revenue in 2021, and it'll probably be about $9.2 million in 2022. On the electric side, we're projected to add to reserves, or a positive income, I should say, a cash flow of about $606,000. That is an increase of $468,000 in overall revenues from 2021. 2022 does require a rate increase of, a rate increase was approved by the commission of 2% for residential and commercial usage rates. And we're adding $2 to the base fee. Should add, for an average customer, that should amount to about $3.50 a month. Keep in mind, we had no rate increases in 2021. The total of the rate increases adds about $230,000 to the revenue. The 2022 budget projects an increase of about $504,000 in overall expenditures. And it's broke down on the following. An increase of $442,000 in source supply, and really what source supply breaks down to is in about $145,000 in depreciation, and that's primarily from, it was about $1.1 million worth of streetlights that we had put on Main Street. So that depreciation cost will start in 2022. And then I need to procure power from our wholesale power supplier in the amount of, I'm projecting about $300,000 in energy. And that's just from increased usage throughout our community. Primarily, our commercial's been about the same, but primarily driven by a residential increase of energy usage. There's a decrease of $8,000 in SIMPA. Really, that amounts to O&M charges. Varies every year depending on the projects that we pick for doing work in the power plant. We're reimbursed 100% by SIMPA on those projects, so it just changes a little bit each year. A decrease, excuse me, an increase of $12,300 in distribution of material costs. Just material costs are just kind of going through the roof lately, and it's really reflected in our CIP cost. Decrease in $5,000 in customer service. Really, that's we're just hoping to have less bad debt going into 2021. We had about $18,000 worth of bad debt in 2021. Excuse me, less in 2022, but in 2021, and we attribute a lot of that to the COVID crisis in regards to people not being able to pay bills. And then an increase of $63,000 in A&G. 13,000 of that is an operating expense, and about $50,000 into staff wages and people moving around, and about half time of an extra hire. I have a part-time scheduled in there, and we'll probably bring him on full-time halfway through the year next year. I still really struggle to hire employees. I can't get linemen, especially experienced linemen. We've had 0 applicants come in, and we've been advertising about 3 months. We're probably just gonna have to work through attrition and bring our people up within our organization ourselves as apprentices and work them up into journeymen and do it that way. And it's doable. We'll figure that out. I purchased about $72 million or 72 million kWh in 2021. that was up about 11 million KWH over 2022. Yeah, over 2020. I project, I'm thinking, I use a 5-year average on my projections, and so I'm projecting about 71 million KWH in 2022. Obviously, the main projects for 2021 was the Main Street project. 83 streetlight fixtures were installed, 146 fixtures were hung. We saved about $100,000 over what it would have been had we bid that project out to contractors. And yet our staff, we were reimbursed for our labor for putting them up in the amount of about $166,000. So it was kind of a win for the utility and win for the city to be able to, and we've got a good product and we know what we have up there. I'm projecting about $936,000 in CIP costs for 2022. That's being driven by the need for we've got to replace one of the engines in the power plant. That's our black start engine. In other words, if the city goes dark, we start that engine to get other ones going. And then the balance of that really goes towards rebuild on our distribution system. And we do between $300,000 and $500,000 a year just to make sure that we're keeping our distribution system up to the best standards that there is. And we hope to be in our new building out here in late spring. It's progressing along pretty good, and as you can see, part of the walls and so are starting to go up. That's actually a support wall for the mezzanine that you see going up there now. I think my major concerns going into 2022 are equipment shortages and staffing. I think we'll be able to work through that, but equipment shortages are really a concern right now. Transformers are out as much as 2 years. So it's just, I've got staff ordering equipment for the 2023 construction season right now just because we're not guaranteed to be able to get it.
And that's all supply chain stuff? Or?
Supply chain, yeah.
Wow.
But,
Unless you know how to build a transformer.
yeah. Otherwise, I mean, if you got a chance to look through the packet,
Go to
there's a
school
lot.
for it in that time.
There's a lot of information in there. As you can see, New Prague's rates are really good. We're one of the lowest ones in the area. We don't carry, we carry no debt on the electric side and a fair amount of debt on the water side, but had a really good year, and so I'll take any questions.
Yeah, that starts my question. Do you get any kind of COVID relief from the bad debt that you're sitting on?
We did not.
And there's no COVID relief money open up?
Not, so let me rephrase that a little bit, Rick. We got a lot of the customers got a lot of relief individually from different organizations, the county, whatever. There was several $1 million of relief out there that a lot more people qualified this past year than would have normally. And that continues today, you know, even going through present time here, both water and electric now. So was there relief? Yeah, but not directly to the utility. It came through the customer itself, and we aided them in applying for those different programs. And for the most part, a lot of them took advantage of it. So it would have been a lot worse because we went 6 to 8 months there where we didn't charge late fees or turn anybody off. And I thought it was going to be a lot worse than what we ended up with, and it turned out pretty good. So in regards to that, we were maybe $5,000 over what we would have normally been at in uncollected payments. Mm-hmm. So in the scheme of things, it really turned out good.
And then the second question I had for you, you're gonna be replacing one of them engines, right? Is that the one that's for the third or middle bay that's open?
No, that's a future project, Rick. There's gonna be some opportunities coming up to really look at our fleet as a whole in regards to generation. But this engine that we're talking about now is just a support engine for the power plant
It's
itself.
that small one on the side and then you're gonna rebuild it.
Yes. That's a 1930s vintage engine that we use it for black start and for peak control. To be honest with you, I thought it was on the last leg when I started here, and that was 33 years ago. So a lot of stuff going on. It's going really good. So
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Anything else? Anybody else?
That is all for them. I will,
Okay.
two more quick ones I want to highlight here. In terms of the ambulance, for 2022, we are looking at projecting adding just over $9,000 to revenues. This is coming off of a $200 decrease to our projected revenues and a $1,000 decrease due to our budgeted expenditures. Really, the decrease in budgeted expenditures is just coming from us trying to better align our actual spending with what's actually happening each year instead of budgeting a higher amount and then coming in way over. So,
So what do we use this money for the ambulance?
we would ultimately, I would assume we would end up using it for facility upgrades, or if we have to do something out there with the actual facility that we.
Okay.
Or if we take the ambulance service back.
Back.
Or if for some reason we take it back and have to
Then-
purchase a whole new
okay.
fleet of ambulances and
Okay.
that sort of thing. So, are there any questions on the ambulance service budget? Then the final one I'll look at is the EDA budget. And of note, the EDA wants to look at this one more time, so this will be the budget we are taking back to them. For 2022, we are projecting a small decrease in revenues. Really, as we've talked, the $50,000 that is levied is their main revenue, but we do each year collect a small amount of interest income, and we are just projecting slightly lower interest income due to lower interest rates. In terms of revenues, we are then projecting the same amount of decrease in revenues. As we've discussed, we are proposing an additional staff member, which will be half paid for out of this EDA budget. And then a few of the other notables, there is still going to be a transfer out of the EDA budget to help pay for Ken's and my time, but the idea would be the new staff member would focus a little bit more on it than we do. And then other than that, it would just be materials that we end up using, as well as any special projects. I do know we are building up that fund a little bit because we are projecting in the near future having to add on to the infrastructure out there so that can continue to develop. In terms of the industrial park, we don't have any planned expenditures per se, other than depreciation, because we can't guarantee if anyone will actually buy a lot or not, and so we don't necessarily want to plan for that expenditure. And so the decrease in expenditures is just decreasing the amount of depreciation that we have out there on the existing street and water facilities. So, are there any questions on EDA at the moment? Okay, well, I will wrap this up then, just kind of giving an overview of what taxes would look like. For every $500 someone would owe the city taxes, ultimately $392.72 of that would go towards our general fund. $101.91 would go towards debt service, and then $5.36 would go towards our EDA. And breaking down that general fund further, this is where the graph gets really tiny and is impossible to see. Really what you're looking at, your two largest slices there are your police and streets. That would be the brown and yellow respectively. Parks would be your gray one, and then administration would be your orange. So that is kind of a general overview of what we're proposing. Some of the things we've discussed already tonight, but are not necessarily part of the levy. We're looking at pulling these out of the 499 fund. Would be the election equipment at almost $9,000. Police squad car, including the graphics and radar equipment. Potential chief's vehicle. Replacing a plow truck with funding that either through an equipment certificate, fund balance, or potentially using our ARPA funding that we received. And then demolition of the swimming pool at $65,000. So, are there any questions?
The police car,
Yeah.
do we have to, excuse me, do we have to replace all the equipment, and we just can't move it from one, the lights and everything from one to another?
The light bar we moved, the radio and all the equipment inside, we move over. With the newer model, we have to replace the cages
Oh,
inside, between the back cage and the front cage has to get replaced.
okay.
No, but whatever items we can use
You do.
are transferred over.
Okay,
And that's part of that, 17,000 is part of that transfer cost.
okay.
We use a company up in Jordan, they're stationed at now. So we'll take a squad up there, they'll take out all the equipment, have ordered what we need to put into that one, and then they'll rebuild when we take it up there.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd open the Truth and Taxation hearing. Is there anybody that wants to address the council with this Truth and Taxation hearing? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I'll close the hearing. I would take a motion and second.
So moved.
I'll second.
Rick and Maggie, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I forgot to do that the last one. But it's done. Okay, do we need any other discussion on that, or is this now next council? We're gonna.
So the next council meeting is when we'll bring forward the resolution for the actual levy amount.
All right. Okay, if everybody's okay, I'd move on to item number 10. Approving resolution for Mr. Cullen. Thank you for sitting through this meeting.
Let me just say, after all those wonderful reports, mine is easy, I just wanna build a garage.
I know.
Oh, Patty, thank you, and
Thanks,
thank you.
Patty.
Thanks, Patty.
What happened?
He is the gatekeeper.
There we go.
Good night, Chris.
All right, we will make it quick, and thank you again for being patient tonight. This is variance V4 2021, front yard setback, which is actually the side of Mr. Collins' front yard. From 30-foot setback for this detached garage down to 13 feet. So we'll run through the background on this real quickly for you. So basically a 17-foot variance is what he's seeking for this detached garage addition. He lives on the corner lot. His lot was platted back in 1954. Back in that time, they never added additional width for corner lots like we would do now. So obviously they placed the home less than the 30-foot setback from First Street, which is the corner front of the home there. Some cities provide for a reduced corner front setback. We do not. We have a 30-foot, whether you're adjacent to your house facing the road on the front and the side, it's all 30-foot. So obviously the home was built in 1965 before we had zoning as well. So it wasn't, they weren't looking at these things at that point. So to get that detached garage built, I should note also that the home does have a single attached garage. And one of the questions that came at the planning commission meeting was, can you add on to the attached single stall garage? And the only place there would have been to add on would be to go into the backyard off the back, but that was actually where they have a den in the home and then kind of a patio area. So that would have just made it double deep and obviously not like an additional 2 stalls that they're proposing with this 26 by 30-foot garage. So the planning commission did recommend approval on a 3-0 vote. We only had the applicant at the meeting to provide comment. But just real quickly, the zoning in the neighborhood there is single-family residential. We have slightly older homes as you head toward the west and have single-family RL 70 district, which does have a reduced setback to 25 feet. So even if this is in that district, they still would be seeking the variance. So a little hard to see on the overhead there, but the dashed green line is the setback area that would have to be met for the garage. It's obviously much further set in than where the home currently is, and one of the things we talked about at planning commission was, the applicant could move that garage back into the area where it would meet all the setback requirements, but from a practical standpoint and comparing it to the neighborhood where there's not a prevailing setback of that full 30-foot setback, he's simply looking to line it up with the edge of his home along First Street. It lines up exactly with the home on the lot to the west, on the west side of the alley. And then the homes on the north side are also less than 30 foot, between 14 and 17 feet from that same property line along First Street. So really not changing the essential character of the neighborhood. Practical difficulty, like I said, is the home being placed closer to the street than our current ordinance requirement, and then just the practicality of he wants to keep his backyard open and usable as much as possible. So a couple of photos here to show you that. He will have to remove a couple of trees, particularly that evergreen that you see kind of in the foreground near the alley, and then the other large tree there, in order to accommodate that detached garage. And then that shed will be removed as well in place of the two-car garage. Just a couple of views. Lower right picture there is the home directly to the west. That is also 13 foot from the street, just as his home is as well on that upper left photo. Then I went back in the Google Street map archives before the road was repaved, or partially repaved, I should say, and just gives a little different perspective. But again, we don't have a 30-foot setback being met by any home in that neighborhood, so really won't change the character and the look of that street view as you drive down there. So again, staff and the planning commission recommend approval, and that is in accordance with the resolution that was included in the packet. And that follows the staff report that you also had in your packet. There was no changes between that meeting and what you're seeing here tonight.
Do we gotta saw up the curb in order to get an apron on that, or?
Yeah, he would have to do that. It would be inspected by Public Works Department at the time, or his contractor would call that in at the time they would need to do that, make sure it provides a correct approach and tied in as required.
And then your contractor's gonna do all of that, and there's not a city participation in it?
There would be no city cost in that.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Good luck.
Can you rent out that extra stall? The space. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Aquatic Fitness Center year-end financials.
Yes, this is more of an FYI on the full financials coming from the Aquatic Center. Just of note, they projected out and ended with a loss of $347,334 total. So to the city, that's a 50% split for $173,667. As they run numbers, they were actually looking at that continuing to decrease as it has over the last couple of years when they're operating at full strength, down to $149,469 is what they're had us budget for, basically, of what they were thinking for next year. So.
And Maggie can back me up on this, but they are increasing their memberships, and they're doing everything they possibly can.
Yeah, the numbers are trending in a positive direction. definitely. So the monthly loss, I think 3 months ago, I think it was, don't quote me on this, about 26,000, and now I think this last month it was 14,000. One of the things that we just have to know is that when certain expenses come in, and then payroll's always 2 weeks in arrears. So some months are gonna be higher and some months are gonna be a bit lower, so it's just, but it is trending in the right direction.
I was wondering, maybe you can respond to that, is, a lot of the costs are obviously personnel related and a lot of things, but are there increasing in staffing for next year in this budget? Is it more people, you think?
No, not permanent staff, so they're looking, they hired a person for the front desk, just because, that person, they're part-time, so they're just filling the hours. They're looking for more fitness instructors, more lifeguards are necessary. But still, the aquatics supervisor, the fitness supervisor, those positions are not changing, and staff is not being added for the management of the facility.
Bet you get your lifeguards, you need more here and less here, and the program there'll be a program and it'll be seasonal. So that kind of little stuff changes, but.
Yeah, sorry to interject, the one thing they did change was the daytime to a full-time lifeguard to cover the daytime, early morning into the daytime hours, rather than try to have part-time cover that. It's more stable, and that helps with the silver sneakers and silver fit kind of clientele that they have at that time. So, yeah, looking at anything to keep that consistent schedule is kind of a key thing there.
Yeah, it's the daytime lifeguards that they're having a hard time with, because most of the lifeguards they have are students, and so it's after the school day. So just to speak to what Ken mentioned, is that they did hire a lifeguard for those daytime hours, but in some of the slower time periods, that person's also gonna be doing some administrative work.
Cool. It's a tough sled, it's just.
Yeah.
And chemical costs are going up.
Yep.
And for the projected budget, an increase in utilities because of the cost of natural gas and electricity.
It's over $100,000 increase in expenses and revenues going up, not that much more than that, so it's got a little ways to go yet.
Yeah, it took such a hit during COVID that it's gonna be swimming up rivers, so. Excuse the pun.
It's pretty punny.
Okay, next item is appointment of Kyle Miller to police officer position.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, I'd like you to entertain the appointment of Kyle Miller for the position of police officer. After going through the process of interviewing, Kyle Miller was raised in Montgomery. He graduated from Montgomery Lonsdale High School. He received his bachelor's degree at Winona State University. Kyle Miller then joined the Army National Guard and served for 9 years in various full-time and part-time positions, depending on what the budget allowed at the time. It was during the time he spent as an analysis for the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office Violent Crime Enforcement Team. When he decided to become a law enforcement officer, he was hired by the Minnesota State Patrol in a program that paid for continuing education to obtain a law enforcement certificate, complete his skills course, and successfully was able to pass the Minnesota Police Officer Standard and Training Test. He was unable to complete the academy and has resumed a previous employment opportunity at Regions Hospital as a safety and security officer. Because of Kyle Miller's experience, training, demeanor, and personality, he will make a great addition to the New Prague Police Department. He will serve the citizens of New Prague in a professional manner with integrity. On the back side are just some more of a summary of his background and education and training. and experience. I would recommend that Kyle Miller be appointed as to the police officer position with an effective start date upon successful completion of all elements of the conditional offer. He would start at step 1 of the 2021 law enforcement, or LELS labor agreement, and be awarded 40 hours of vacation, and upon that being added to his bank, he would earn 80 hours per year as broke down by the labor agreement also. Kyle has, his background was completed by Sergeant Applin today, and he would also need to complete his psych test, physical test, and a drug test. And once those are successfully completed, then he would be able to be hired, and that's why I left the date open as soon as possible upon successfully completion of those elements.
And that's when you bring him in to swear him in and all that?
Yeah, once he'll start his field training, get some, he'll have to do his firearms and various things. But he'll start on the road, and then at a council meeting after that, we'd bring him in for his swearing.
So you don't wait the whole 6 training time?
No.
Or whole 3 months of training time and then?
Generally, we don't, no.
Okay, any questions?
I have one, I guess, I support your decision-making on this, but since you wrote it in the narrative, I guess I just wanted clarification, or at least do my due diligence. Are there any issues with the inability to complete the academy, with any concerns you might have in performing his position here?
No, through the interview process, we spoke at length about that, and it is not a concern to me at all.
And I'm not sure what that means when you say unable to complete the academy, but I'm assuming it's a.
Is that for the state troopers? I mean,
Performance
the
or
academy?
whatever.
It was a email violation that ended his enrollment there.
Okay.
So I don't think it's something that we have to worry about. That it is something that he has moved on from, and just by simple supervision and vigilance, we are not going to be dealing with something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, any other questions? There is, I'd take a motion to approve the appointment of Kyle Miller for the police officer position.
I'll make a motion to approve Kyle Miller as the police officer per the recommendation
Second.
listed above.
And Sean seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There you go. Okay, approval of a 2-year GASB 6768 actuarial valuation agreement with Hildy.
Yes, in 2015, 17, and 19, the city entered into agreement with Hildy to prepare an actuarial evaluation. Under state GASB requirements, statements 67 and 68. For those that don't know, an actual aerial valuation is basically an analysis of the assets and liabilities to ensure that a pension can continue to pay its bills. Statement 67 deals with the pension itself, whereas 68 applies more to the employers. GASB 68 is must be based on a valuation that is less than 24 months old, which is why if you look at the costs for this, in 2021 they're performing the full analysis, which is why they're charging $24.50, and then in 2022 they have the information, they're more submitting it, and we're just paying for the actual reporting at that point. And so it is a recommendation of staff to accept Hildy's proposal for preparing these actuarial valuation reports for us.
Okay, any questions?
Well, I was looking at the agreement for the Hildy Consulting Services. I guess the only thing that I don't like is item number 2, that if they would charge us 12% interest if we didn't pay. I think that is rather high. However, for the dollars that we would be paying, but essentially $3,500, I don't think we would be late in paying, but I just wanted to point that out.
Gosh. Yeah, I agree. Any other questions? Hearing none, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Sean made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And Bruce on the second. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item is the MnDOT right-of-way acquisition.
Yes, this is a contract we had with MnDOT for the Main Street project, for them reimbursing us costs that we go into acquiring, rights of way, whether they're temporary or otherwise. Originally, the contract was not to exceed $95,000. As we've gotten deeper into it, our current estimates are that, our total cost will be somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. But MnDOT, not wanting to take a chance of having to do paperwork later on, raised our total not to exceed limit here with this one to 175. So all this contract is doing is, raising our spending limit from 95,000 to 175. I guess staff recommends approval.
So moved.
Okay, Rick made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Maggie made a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, miscellaneous is meeting minutes, from previous things.
Yes, there's meeting minutes, and then there's one in there, just for, your information, that, our police department, recently passed their review of the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training. So I just threw that in there for your information.
It's good to know. Okay, I'll go around the horn. Rick?
Nothing.
Bruce?
You know, you mentioned the police training, and I know you do active shooter scenarios. Has there been one done in the last year at the school, or?
Not in the last year. We did some of the field force training, mobile field force.
But is there ongoing, communication, like, do you get together on a regular basis to talk about that, like,
With the school and.
a couple times a year to go through those kind of
Yep.
activities?
Our school resource officer always, addresses that plan each year.
So there is a plan in place,
Yep.
and it's reviewed, and fire drill or kind of a drill is done every so
Yep.
often?
Yeah, along with the school's lockdown procedures, the SRO is involved with those also. When they run them, just like a fire drill, he checks locked doors and makes sure everything's in compliance with the lockdowns. But, yeah, we continue to follow through with those.
Great. I guess my only other comment, I mentioned about the public speaking, which I totally agree with, to provide that time. But if we could make sure we adhere to the time limits involved in it.
No, I hear you.
And, I'm aware of other cities that limit it to 3 minutes, and I'm aware of some cities that require you to sign up ahead of time and only limit 3 speakers at a time, just so we watch it.
Yeah, no, I was aware and
Maybe if we had an electric thing or
just-
something, we could push a button.
you know, they were told and they've been warned by other communities and
How we deliver that, I'll look into and see if we can get kind of a clear, maybe we have a light that turns red or something like that.
Put in that big air horn.
because, oh, I agree with you. And they knew that with other communities and it's just, yeah.
I would anticipate that group, she would have burned up for 5 minutes, and then somebody else would
Which
have
one came
walked
up, yeah.
took right off from where she had her.
I was waiting for that.
Well, and then maybe I should have did it that way, but I mean, we would have heard the whole
Yeah,
spiel, you know.
They got it done anyway.
So, but I hear you, and I had a question by some public, are there more Christmas decorations gonna go up, like, next year on those posts, or is that it, or am I?
That's totally up to the chamber. Dwayne.
Okay,
That's a chamber directive.
okay,
The accommodations are there, should they decide to
put lighting on them, whatever. We made sure that the wind loading and the electrical was set up to do so.
Yeah, I didn't know how to answer it, and I wasn't involved with that stuff, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're limited on funds and so.
What?
Oh, before I forget, the Emerald, is that going to be provided to the Newbury Times then, or?
Just gave it to Patrick.
Oh, okay.
During the meeting here, so yeah, that was, obviously, information just came out today. I will get a landing page up on our website that'll basically have information from our dashboard. It'll have, just start tomorrow, we'll put the, press release on there, but we'll probably build that out with other information, and then, as we had in the update that Josh gave last week, we are going to apply for the next round of funding. Good or however you wanna look at it, we will certainly rank better with Emerald Dashboard in the community now. But I think we have a really good shot.
Well, I wonder if our person can go to the golf course, because that's probably where it's more important.
It got brought up that you're gonna be hit hard.
Yeah, we have too many trees out there anyway, so.
Do you have any idea how many ash are out there?
We don't, but, I bet Jeff has a pretty good idea, and where they are, so, yeah.
Who brought that up lately, anyway? Who was that? Was that you?
Yeah.
You jinxed us.
Well, you know, when.
It's coming, it's in Webster, so.
When the elm trees all died, we had an availability of a lot of ash from the old city farm. And that's what we moved into the parks and into the golf course and all over the place because it was free trees. Now,
I think that was pretty common. Most people, when the elms started going, replaced them all with ash.
Mhm.
And so now I heard a speaker here not too long ago mention that his guess is the next bug or disease is gonna be maple trees, cause he feels like we've overplanted those now.
Great.
So plant weird things, that's the moral of the story.
The
Plant
big
weird
thing
trees.
As part of the grant, if we apply for money, and we probably will to
Mhm.
remove and replace, is they wanna see diversity out there. Which I think we've been doing a pretty good job in different varieties, like around City Hall, we have hackberry, we have swamp white oak, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yep, correct. Sean?
No.
Thank you.
No, I don't have anything.
Josh?
Nothing else?
Ken? Fire chief? Kurt?
I do have one quick
Okay.
one. If there's a dollar amount agreed on for, money to be bonded for the golf course, when would that take place? I know for a fact right now that largest unit that we have on the list, the Upper Midwest Toro distributor has one available, but what's the timing on all of that? Cause we would then hope to order at least that single piece, as soon as possible, cause I don't want this to sound like a threat, but just so I can come back to my superintendent who got us the numbers and say, this would be the day that you could potentially submit it.
When do we technically approve the final budget?
That would be at the next meeting, the 20th.
And how much is that piece of equipment?
It's roughly $90,000 to $95,000.
Well, the issue, the bonding is a bond that won't occur till later next year. So if the council approves the budget and approves the capital expense, Bruce has done this before and others, you try to figure out a way to fund it before the bond happens and reimburse ourselves. But there's a requirement that you have to, Bruce, you're more familiar with that. There's a thing it has to be within a certain window of time, right?
Josh, it's a reimbursement resolution, right?
Yeah.
And there is a window of time.
6 months or what is it? I don't know.
You just have to define it in the resolution, right?
That I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to look up exactly what that length of time is, but, I can do all that research and we could potentially look at it for next meeting
If the council's willing
If the council wants me to go that way.
to do it, then the council basically funds, or the city funds it.
Okay.
And
Correct.
reimburses itself.
Yeah,
when the bond happens.
the small curve with the golf operation is, again, the supply chain, which is bad, but the season as well, so we could use the piece of equipment, end of March, first part of April, but the window just is shrinking. I'm just wondering when. We don't wanna just for kicks, order it, not having anybody's approval, cause that won't happen and it can happen, but when could it happen? That's, I guess, what I'm after.
Can't you, do your research and, you and the mayor put it on the agenda for next time, right underneath the budget?
Yep, that is possible.
So the 20th.
Well, I don't know, is there?
Assuming that's the
is there
direction.
individuals that oppose to?
I am not, no.
I'm not.
I think you could kind of put your finger on it or tell them that, you know,
Reserve it, so to speak, or is there a formal way of doing it?
well,
Or
I'm suggesting not a formal way because you don't have we don't have the authority yet. to
right,
do it.
right.
The formal way would be that resolution.
Yeah, I mean, I think your
approving the
best bet would
budget
be-
and then doing that resolution.
Yeah.
The night of the 20th would probably be the soonest
Okay.
you can get a go-ahead on that.
Okay.
But on the
But you
21st,
certainly could call them and say you got a positive response and it's gonna be heard in the 20th. Can you save
See
it
if you
for
could just
us?
have them push it to the back of the warehouse, behind a bush or something.
Put your name on it.
Yes.
Lick it with your tongue.
It is, he
Yeah,
changed
like
his
it.
name to Toro, so.
But I would encourage you to look at all that equipment. What's the timeline of actually receiving it? What's the time that you could actually do it? Because if you're gonna try to
Right.
package something,
Yeah.
it's all gonna kind of fit together. And if there's other items like that you're gonna have a problem with, you'll probably deal with them all at the same time. So don't wait until later.
Josh is your main guy on that one.
That's pressure.
Him and Patty.
Okay. Chief? Bruce? Matt? Okay. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
As long as council.
Because I don't think that really needs a second. So next council, we're gonna have the Boy Scouts here. Just FYI, they're gonna do presentation of colors.